Mooned out. They say we went to the moon in 1969. 6 missions, 12 men, hundreds of pounds of rock, video footage, photographs, national pride. But here's the thing, some people never bought it. Not because they hate space, not because they don't believe in science, but because certain details never sat right. The shadows, the flag, the radiation belts, the missing telemetry data, the unexplained anomalies, the absence of stars in the photos, the perfect framing of the shots, the fact that no one has been back in over 50 years, despite exponential advances in technology. NASA says we lost the tapes, the original blueprints, the equipment, billions of dollars in funding, and we can't replicate not that space is fake, but that the moon landing might have been staged, a filmed event. Directed maybe by someone like Kubrick, that's the claim. That NASA hired or coerced Hollywood to simulate the landing. Why? Because beating the Soviets in the space race was political, strategic, psychological. In the Cold War, perception was power. The argument goes, America couldn't afford to lose, so if they couldn't win in reality, they had to win on television. And TV they did. The world watched grainy footage of Neil Armstrong descending that ladder. One small step, one giant leap, but critics point out that the camera was already set up outside, filming him. Who put it there? They point to the dust kicked up by the lunar module's descent engine, yet there's no crater under it, no visible disturbance. They point to the crosshairs in the images, supposedly etched onto the film, that appear to be behind objects, not over them. As if the photos were manipulated, superimposed. They point to the flag, fluttering despite the moon having no atmosphere. NASA said it was a ripple from the unfolding. Others say it looks like wind on the moon. Then there's the Van Allen radiation belts. Massive zones of charged particles surrounding Earth, dangerous to astronauts, lethal in theory. Yet the Apollo missions allegedly flew through them with thin aluminum shielding. No illness, no issue, no questions, except from those who ask, how and why haven't we gone back? NASA's answer varies. Funding, risk, priorities. But for skeptics, the absence is proof. Proof that the technology didn't exist then and doesn't exist now, that the risk wasn't space. The risk was exposure of a fabrication so massive it became untouchable. Because once something is patriotic enough, emotional enough, nostalgic enough, questioning it feels like heresy, like betrayal. That's why moon doubt isn't shouted from rooftops. It's whispered. It's buried in forums, in documentaries that never reach mainstream, in half-jokes and late-night discussions. But it doesn't go away, and NASA hasn't helped. They've misplaced tapes. They've reused footage. They've released inconsistent explanations. And in the age of deepfakes and CGI, more people now ask, if we faked it today, it would be obvious. But in 1969, before digital scrutiny, maybe not. Some point to Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, released just a year before the moon landing. The sets, the lighting, the realism, the moonwalks that look eerily similar. Could the same techniques have been used again? Or better yet, was Kubrick involved? Some conspiracy theorists claim The Shining was his confession, that the boy's Apollo 11 sweater and the mysterious room 237, like 237,000 miles from Earth to moon. Coincidence or clue? That's the game moon doubters play, piecing together oddities that, alone, seem benign, but together feel off. There's also the geopolitical angle. The U.S. needed a win. Vietnam was a disaster. Trust in government was fading, and if they could sell the ultimate narrative, man conquering space, they could distract, unite, dominate the story. And if it worked once, who's to say it hasn't worked again? That's the real root of moon doubt. It's not just about Apollo, it's about trust. If the government could lie about war, about surveillance, about experiments on its own people, then why not this? Why not the moon? And the more you dig, the weirder it gets. Engineers who were silenced, astronauts who refused to swear on the Bible that they walked on the moon, gaps in footage, inconsistencies in shadows, telemetry data missing, forever. You can't recheck the math, you just have to believe a story that hasn't been repeated since, that was achieved on computers with less power than your phone, with film that somehow survived the temperature extremes, the radiation, the vacuum. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't, but if there's one thing conspiracy theories thrive on, it's silence. The more you dismiss questions, the louder they grow. The more you bury inconsistencies, the more they haunt. So even now, decades later, the theory persists, not because it's proven, but because it was never allowed to be questioned fully, and because questioning it taps into something deeper, a sense that reality is curated, that truth is fragile, that history can be scripted. So as you drift off tonight, think about the moon. Cold, silent, far away. Think about how easily an entire planet believed what they were shown. How many stories are told in the dark? How many of them are real? And how many are too perfect to be anything but theater? Hollow Earth, picture this. Beneath your feet, past the crust and mantle, there isn't just molten rock. There's space. A world. Not a core of heat and iron, but a massive hidden civilization. Oceans. Continents. Life. That's the Hollow Earth theory. Sounds ridiculous at first, sure, but people have believed in some form of it for centuries. Ancient myths talked about subterranean realms. Dante's Inferno mapped 9 circles of hell below. The Greeks told stories of Hades. Hindus speak of Patala. Buddhists describe Shambhala. Even the Bible hints at Sheol. Over and over, we see this recurring idea. There's something beneath us, not just depth, reality, maybe even a different kind. In the 17th century, a scientist named Edmund Halley, the same Halley from the comet, proposed the Earth was made of concentric spheres like Russian dolls, each layer spinning, each with its own magnetic field. His theory tried to explain compass irregularities, but he also thought life might exist down there. Cities, light, a whole ecosystem hidden beneath the surface. And this wasn't just fantasy. It was published, respected. Others expanded it. In the 1800s, a man named John Cleves Sims Jr. pushed the idea further. He claimed the Earth was hollow and habitable inside, that there were massive openings at the North and South Poles, that you could literally sail inside. He even tried to fund an expedition. Congress laughed, but some people didn't. In fact, stories of polar holes keep resurfacing. Some believe satellite imagery of the poles is censored, that NASA or other agencies blur the entrances. That aircraft are restricted near those regions, not because of weather, but because of access. Access to somewhere they don't want us to see, a hidden Earth. Think of it, vast tunnels, entire landscapes, even ancient civilizations, not alien, just forgotten. Maybe survivors of Atlantis, maybe something older, maybe something that never left. There are claims, wild ones, of explorers who accidentally found themselves in underground worlds, of people who returned with stories of beings taller than humans, beings that glowed, that spoke in unknown languages, that seemed ancient and advanced. Even the Nazis were rumored to have searched for Hollow Earth. Some conspiracy theorists claim that after World War II, a secret base was set up in Antarctica, that they found something there, something worth hiding. Operation High Jump, a real mission in 1946, sent 13 ships, aircraft, and thousands of troops to Antarctica, officially for training. But the scale seemed excessive, and it ended abruptly. Conspiracy theorists think they were repelled. By what? Something hidden beneath. Some think that's why the Antarctic Treaty exists. Dozens of countries agreeing to demilitarize and limit exploration. Why? What are they protecting? There's more. The inner Earth is said to be lit by a central sun. Not a fireball, but a light source that keeps the interior habitable. Some call this world Agartha, a lost paradise, hidden from the chaos of the surface, shielded, self-sustained. And here's the weird part. Some believe we've been there, or at least that leaders have. That presidents, scientists, and military officials have met with inner Earth beings. That these beings prefer to remain separate, but intervene occasionally when the surface world gets too close to destruction. It sounds like science fiction, and maybe it is. But the Hollow Earth theory persists because it taps into something primal, our fear of the unknown, our instinct that there's more, our sense that maybe we've been lied to, not just about politics or history, but about the very structure of the world. And there are oddities that feed this, stories of strange booming sounds underground, of sinkholes that reveal massive caverns, of lost expeditions, of technology that seems out of place. There's the claim that Jules Verne's journey to the center of the Earth wasn't just fiction, that it was based on older stories, forbidden maps, and then there's Admiral Richard Byrd, a real explorer, a real admiral. In 1947, during an Arctic flight, he reportedly radioed back that he'd entered a strange land, with lush forests, warm air, mammoths, that he saw flying discs, that beings contacted him, that he was told humanity was on a dangerous path. The record of this flight is debated, supposedly classified, officially denied, but for Hollow Earth believers, it's a smoking gun. So what would it mean if it were true? That there's a world beneath ours, safer, more advanced, possibly watching us, possibly protecting themselves, or possibly planning something else. Maybe that's where UFOs come from, not outer space, but inner space. Maybe that's why so many sightings happen near mountains, caves, or remote polar regions. And maybe that's why, for all our satellites and deep drilling, we still know so little about what's under us. We've never drilled past the crust, not even close. The Earth is over 7,900 miles in diameter. The deepest hole humans have made is about 7.5 miles, less than 0.1%. We assume what's down there, but we don't know. So tonight, as you lie still, imagine what could be moving beneath you, not just magma and tectonic plates, but cities, light, minds, waiting, watching, maybe even dreaming of a day when they surface, not to conquer, but to reveal. Or maybe they already have. Maybe you've seen them, felt them. Maybe Hollow Earth isn't under us. Maybe it's beside us, or inside us. Another layer of truth, just barely out of reach. Phantom time. Here's a strange question. What year is it, really? You might say 2025, based on the Gregorian calendar. But what if that number is wrong? Not just by a few years, but by centuries. That's the core of the phantom time hypothesis, a theory that claims entire chunks of our history were fabricated. Specifically, that about 200 not misrecorded, not lost, invented, fabricated, inserted into the timeline. The theory was proposed by German historian Herbert Illig in the 1990s. He argued that the early Middle Ages, also known as the Dark Ages, are suspiciously dark, no archaeological evidence, no consistent records, no technological progress. Just 300 years of near silence, and then, suddenly, the High Middle Ages kick in with architecture, philosophy, universities, cathedrals. Illig didn't think that silence was natural. He thought it was deliberate, that a few powerful people, perhaps in the Holy Roman Empire or the Vatican, revised the calendar, added years, created fake rulers, faked entire events. Why? Power, prestige, control of chronology meant control of history, and control of history meant control of truth. The key target of this theory is Emperor Charlemagne. Supposedly lived in the 8th to 9th century, revered as the father of Europe. But Illig and others argue that Charlemagne never existed, that his deeds were recycled legends written centuries later, placed in a fabricated time slot, that the architecture attributed to his era looks out of place, too advanced, that no original artifacts or grave sites can be verified, just stories, copies of copies. This might sound absurd. How could you fake 3 centuries? But think about it. How much do you personally know about the year 750 AD? How many names, dates, places, events? Most people couldn't name a single thing, and that's the point. Most of our understanding of ancient and medieval history comes from a few written sources, manuscripts, chronicles, letters, all easily altered, all copied by hand, and most of them controlled by the church or the nobility. If those sources were tampered with, who would know? And when the Gregorian calendar was introduced in 1582 to correct the Julian calendar's drift, the math didn't fully add up. The drift over centuries should have been more extreme, unless some of those centuries never happened. That's what phantom time theorists point to. A calendar misalignment, a suspicious silence in the archaeological record, a political motive to rewrite history. And here's the unsettling part. It's almost impossible to disprove. We assume our calendar is accurate because it's shared, but the deeper you dig, the murkier the evidence becomes. Radiocarbon dating, often disputed, especially in old materials. Dendrochronology, tree rings, limited by location. Astronomy, it only confirms that we're on Earth, not what year it is. So what if we're not living in 2025? What if it's really 1728 or earlier? What if the Enlightenment, the Renaissance, even the fall of Rome are closer to us than we've been told? What if time itself has been padded? That idea breaks something inside, because time is how we measure meaning, progress, identity. But what if your birthday was calculated on a fake number line? What if entire lineages trace back to characters who never lived? What if textbooks are built on timelines constructed by ambition? The phantom time hypothesis isn't just about dates. It's about the fragility of historical truth. It reminds us that history isn't a recording. It's a story, told by people, written by victors, and if the story was wrong at the foundation, everything built on top is compromised. The scariest part? We'd never know, because we don't experience history, we inherit it. We trust that someone else kept the clock honest, but maybe they didn't, maybe they couldn't, or maybe they didn't want to. So tonight, as you fall asleep, don't just wonder what's out there, wonder when you are. Ask yourself if the moment you're in is real, or if it's part of a timeline written to hide another one. Maybe time itself is the conspiracy, and if the dates are fake, what else is? Tartaria Reset. There's a theory, hidden in plain sight, buried beneath ruined buildings, mismatched architecture, and forgotten maps, that says our history isn't just wrong, it's been wiped. That an advanced global civilization once existed, not thousands of years ago, but just a few centuries back, and that it was erased, covered up, rewritten. They called it Tartaria, not a fantasy kingdom, not a metaphor, a real place, visible on old maps, stretching across Eurasia, massive, organized, mysterious. Tartaria appears in atlases from the 16th, 17th, and even 18th centuries, described as vast, with cities, culture, and a people unlike any we know today. But then, it vanishes. No slow decline, no detailed conquest. Just gone. Replaced by other empires. Russia, China, Europe. History moved on, and Tartaria was forgotten, except for a few persistent voices, people who started asking, why are there buildings from the... How did they construct massive stone cathedrals, state capitals, World Fair structures, and intricate domes with technology supposedly powered by horses and hand tools? Why do so many of these buildings look eerily similar, despite being on different continents? Why were they demolished or burned down shortly after being built? The theory goes like this. Tartaria was a global empire, not necessarily modern in the way we think of Wi-Fi and smartphones, but advanced in energy, in architecture, in harmony, a civilization that understood frequencies, free energy, sacred geometry. They built structures that harnessed the Earth's electromagnetic field. That healed, that resonated. And then something happened. A cataclysm, maybe natural, maybe man-made, a flood, a war, a reset. They call it the mud flood. Evidence? Buried first floors, windows underground, doors that open to soil, cities that look like they were excavated, not constructed, buildings with no records of being built, but plenty of records of being discovered. Photographs from the 1800s show urban landscapes supposedly just established, yet featuring ornate architecture, tram systems, and power lines. If these cities were new, who built them? How did they build them so fast? Why do so many of these cities hold massive fires in their early years? Chicago, Boston, San Francisco, Toronto, Paris. Fires that destroyed vast portions of cities, justifying reconstruction. Reconstruction that replaced old-world buildings with modern ones. Was it urban development or erasure? Was history being rewritten, not in textbooks but in bricks? Tartaria theorists point to the 1800s world fairs as further evidence. Massive complexes, domes, towers, and statues, said to be temporary, but so elaborate and enormous they boggle the mind. Built in under 2 years using primitive tech only to be demolished afterward. Why build marvels and destroy them? Or were they remnants of Tartaria, rebranded as fairgrounds, then eliminated? And what about the technology? Tesla hinted at free energy, wireless transmission. He said the Earth was a conductor, that energy could be harvested, shared. But his work was shut down, patents seized, ideas buried. Was he rediscovering Tartarian knowledge? A civilization that didn't rely on oil, coal, or combustion, but on resonance, sound, ether? The architecture matches. Look at the old buildings, star forts, Greco-Roman columns, intricate spires. Not just decorative, functional. Designed to capture energy, align with the heavens, reflect vibration. Tartaria wasn't just a country, it was a paradigm. And that's why it had to be wiped. The reset wasn't just physical, it was historical. After the fall, new powers emerged. They needed a blank slate, a new narrative. And so the old world became a curiosity, a coincidence, forgotten. But the buildings remain, or their ruins, their foundations, the streets that don't align, the bricks buried deep, the tunnels that make no sense. And here's the part that gets under your skin. Maybe we're living in the aftermath of that reset. Maybe this world isn't broken because it's growing, but because it's rebooting. Without the code, Without the original blueprint, we're trying to rebuild without understanding what was lost, and some say another reset is coming. History moves in cycles. Civilizations rise, then fall, then vanish, and each time the survivors start over, told a story that isn't theirs. So tonight, as you fall asleep, think about the buildings in your city, the ones that seem older than their age, the ones with blocked windows, the ones that feel like they belong to another world. Maybe they do. Maybe you walk through Tartaria every day and don't even realize it. Mandela Glitch. Something strange happens when millions of people remember the same event exactly the same way, and yet it never officially happened. Not just one person misremembering, not a rumor, a collective memory shared by strangers around the world with no trace in the historical record. That's the Mandela effect, named after Nelson Mandela because so many people across countries, languages, and age groups distinctly remember him dying in prison in the 1980s. They remember the news footage, the funeral, the public mourning, but none of that happened. He was released. He became president of South Africa. He died decades later, and yet people swear otherwise. So what gives? The mainstream answer is simple: false memory, misremembering, maybe confusing Mandela with Steve Biko, another South African political figure who died in custody. That's the rational explanation. But others aren't buying it, because it's not just Mandela. There's a long, eerie list of shared memories that don't match reality. People remember the Berenstain Bears, spelled with an E, but now it's the Berenstain Bears, with an A. People swear they saw the Monopoly man with a monocle, but he doesn't have one. They remember the Fruit of the Loom logo with the cornucopia, gone. They quote Darth Vader saying, "Luke, I am your father," but the line is no, I am your father. It's not one or two glitches, it's dozens, hundreds, each one small. But together, they point to something else, that maybe reality isn't stable, that maybe our past is being edited, or that we've slipped into another timeline, another version of history, one where subtle details don't match, one where you remember something from Earth A, but now live on Earth B. It sounds wild, but people are freaked out by how specific these memories are. They're not vague impressions. They're concrete images, scenes, phrases. People remember talking about Berenstain as kids. They remember watching Mandela's funeral. They remember watching Shazam, a 90s movie starring Sinbad as a genie, a movie that doesn't exist. You can search. It's not there, but people remember the VHS cover, the plot, the jokes, even scenes. So what's going on? One theory is timeline convergence, that the universe is constantly splitting into parallel versions of itself based on choices, that sometimes these timelines overlap, and when they merge, you bring your memories with you, but the world around you is different. The glitch is the mismatch. You remember one version. The world shows you another. Another theory, simulation, that we're living in a simulated reality, like a video game or a VR world, and every now and then a patch is applied, code is rewritten. Small variables change, but your memories don't get updated. You're a leftover from the previous version. The Mandela effect is the breadcrumb, the bug, or maybe it's a kind of quantum bleed-through. In quantum mechanics, particles can exist in multiple states at once, superposition. What if human memory works the same way? And sometimes when the wave function collapses, you remember a version of reality that didn't win, that no longer exists, or that never did. And there's a more disturbing possibility that someone or something is editing history, not metaphorically, literally, going back and changing details, whether by time travel, advanced tech, or something stranger, you wouldn't know. The books would change, the footage, the logos, but not your memory. That's the flaw in the system. Your mind remembers what the world wants you to forget. There's even a term for this, reality residue. Artifacts, notes, traces that match the old timeline, like people selling vintage Monopoly games where the mascot has a monocle, like printed books that still say Berenstain, like old commercials that quote lines differently. If this is true, it raises questions that break your brain. Who's changing the past? Why? How far does it go? What else have we forgotten? Not because we misremembered, but because someone else wanted us to. And if our memories can't be trusted, what's left? That's the heart of the Mandela Glitch. It's not just about cartoons or logos. It's about reality being slippery, about certainty being fragile, about the possibility that what you know to be true might not be. Ever been in a room and felt like something was off? Ever had a friend remember a shared experience totally differently? Ever known something deep in your bones only to be told it never happened? Maybe you're not crazy. Maybe you're just tuned in, sensitive to the cracks, a witness to the edits, a memory from a forgotten script. So tonight, as you drift off, don't take anything for granted. Not your name, not your timeline, not the year. Check your books, check your logos, look closely. You might find the glitch, or maybe it'll find you. Roswell silence. In July of 1947, something fell from the sky in Roswell, New Mexico. The U.S. Army first said they recovered a flying disc. Newspapers ran with it. Headlines screamed, "RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region." Then, just as suddenly, they retracted the statement, "No flying saucer, just a weather balloon, nothing to see here." But it was already too late. That first admission sparked something, and for decades, people have wondered what really happened in Roswell, and more importantly, why the silence, why the sudden change in story, why the sealed files, missing evidence, and conflicting reports. The official narrative says a high-altitude weather balloon, part of a secret government program called Project Mogul, crashed in the desert. The program was meant to detect Soviet nuclear tests. That's it. End of story. But the theory won't die, because witnesses described something else. Rancher Mac Brazel, who found the wreckage, said it was like nothing he'd ever seen. Thin metal sheets that were almost weightless, yet couldn't be cut, torn, or burned. Strange symbols on beams, material that remembered its shape when crumpled. Military officers who handled the wreckage claimed the same, and then they changed their stories, or stayed silent. Some say they were threatened. Others, years later on their deathbeds, admitted they had lied, that it wasn't a balloon, that there were bodies, small, non-human, retrieved from the crash, taken to secure facilities, studied, hidden for what? Reverse engineering? Public control? Panic avoidance? We don't know. But what's suspicious is how hard the government worked to shut it all down. Why make such a big deal out of a balloon? Why fly the wreckage across the country? Why classify documents for decades? And why did people who tried to investigate, reporters, ex-military, even congressmen, hit wall after wall, but not from Earth? Maybe a scout ship, maybe a probe, maybe an accident, and whatever was inside, biological or synthetic, was retrieved and studied in places like Area 51, in underground labs, but never shared with the public, because the implications would be seismic. Proof we're not alone, proof they're here, now, that they've been watching, or maybe interacting, maybe influencing. Some believe Roswell was the turning point, the moment the U.S. government realized they had to create an entire strategy for containment. Misinformation, ridicule, discredit anyone who talks, turn belief in aliens into a joke, a punchline, so that if someone sees something real, no one listens. Some go further. They think the crash was intended, that it was contact or a warning, that the retrieval was part of a deal, that the U.S. made arrangements, tech in exchange for access, that certain groups got their hands on propulsion systems, materials, energy sources, and that's why tech advanced so rapidly after the 40s. Transistors, microchips, lasers, fiber optics, a post-Roswell boom that looked a lot like reverse engineering. Is it a stretch? Maybe. But the timelines line up, and the people who worked on the wreckage? Many disappeared from public view or joined top-secret programs. And let's not forget Project Blue Book, an official Air Force project to investigate UFOs, started just a few years after Roswell, thousands of sightings cataloged, and yet no answers, just vague conclusions. And behind the scenes, far more data collected than ever released. Even presidents have hinted at it. Clinton, Carter, Obama, all have danced around the topic, and in recent years, the Pentagon finally admitted what they denied for decades, that they have studied unidentified aerial phenomena, that they have footage, that they don't know what they're seeing, that it isn't ours. So if the government is now saying they've seen craft they can't explain, what does that say about 1940? What if everything we know about space, contact, technology, even our own place in the universe, is filtered through that moment? And what if silence isn't just protection from panic, but protection of a lie? A lie that's now so old, so institutionalized, it can't be reversed. So tonight, as you stare into the darkness, think about the desert, the silence, the shifting stories, and the metal that no one could destroy. Maybe the truth is out there, but maybe it's buried, not under sand, under silence. CIA control. There's a theory that the CIA doesn't just spy on enemies, it scripts reality. not in the movies, in real life. That since its formation in 19... Who controls what we see, what we fear, what we trust? Who decides what's a threat and what's a joke? Who filters what reaches your newsfeed, your TV, your textbooks? It's not always politicians. It's not even the president. It's the people behind the curtain. And at the center of that curtain, the CIA. Let's talk Operation Mockingbird, a real program, declassified, verified. In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA recruited journalists, editors, and publishers to shape public opinion. We're talking major outlets: Time, Life, the New York Times, CBS. They didn't just plant stories, they funded entire publications, wrote headlines, controlled narratives. Why? To win the Cold War? Maybe. But once you learn how to shape belief, why stop? It doesn't matter if a war is fought in the jungle if it's already lost in the mind. And what's scarier is that Mockingbird never really ended. It just changed form. Now it's PR firms, tech companies, intelligence consultants. You see a headline, a tweet, a viral video. It feels spontaneous. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's curated. Maybe it's dropped on purpose to distract you, steer you, soften you. And it's not just the media. It's culture, movies, music, trends. Ever wonder why certain tropes get recycled? Why every third movie has government agents as heroes? Why UFOs, when they appear in fiction, are always framed through military lenses? Because the CIA works with Hollywood, another real program. The Department of Defense and CIA routinely advise on film scripts. They offer access to military gear, locations, and intelligence in exchange for script approval, and if a story doesn't fit the narrative, it gets blocked, or rewritten, or doesn't get made. It's subtle. But over time, it shapes how you see power, how you see other countries, how you see yourself. And when the CIA isn't influencing media directly, they're playing the long game. Psychological operations, PSYOPs, mind control experiments. Remember MK Ultra? Not a theory. It happened. The CIA tested LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation on civilians without consent, looking for ways to control behavior, break people down, rebuild them, create new personalities. Some subjects never recovered. Some died. And when it all came out, documents were destroyed. Officials couldn't recall, and yet we're told it was all in the past. But ask yourself, why would they stop? Why would a government agency discover how to shape the human mind and then voluntarily let that power go? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just found better tools: social media, algorithms, echo chambers, emotional triggers. The perfect laboratory. Billions of subjects, all opt-in, all connected. You don't need drugs when you've got dopamine loops, when you can nudge entire populations without lifting a finger. And if you think this is all too complex, ask this: who benefits from confusion, from people losing trust in truth? Who thrives in chaos? Intelligence agencies, because when no one knows what's real, the people who control perception hold all the cards. They don't need to control everyone, just the frame. Just the context, just the story. That's how you win, not with tanks, with belief. So tonight, as you try to quiet your thoughts, remember, reality isn't always discovered. Sometimes it's delivered. And when every voice you hear is echoing the same themes, the same angles, the same fear, maybe it's not coincidence. Maybe it's control. The question is, can you spot the story before it spots you? Time travelers. Time travel isn't just for sci-fi movies and comic books. For decades, stories have emerged, some whispered, some screamed, about people who claim they've seen the future, lived in the past, or slipped between the two. The idea is simple. Time isn't a straight line. It's a loop, a spiral, maybe even a layered stack of possibilities. And sometimes, people fall through the cracks, or jump on purpose. Let's start with one of the most infamous names, John Titor. In the early 2000s, an anonymous user began posting on internet forums claiming to be a time traveler from the year 2036. His posts weren't just vague predictions. They were technical, specific, detailed. He described a civil war in the US, a fractured global order, and a devastating nuclear exchange. He shared images of a supposed time machine, a modified 1967 Chevy equipped with a gravity distortion unit. He answered questions, lots of them. He explained parallel timelines, world lines, and divergence percentages. And then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he vanished, never posted again. The name John Titor still sparks debate. Was it a hoax, an elaborate role play, or something else? Because here's the weird part. Some of his predictions started to line up. The rise in authoritarianism, the global instability, the increase in surveillance. It's not exact, but it's close enough to make you wonder. Then there's Andrew Carlson. In 2003, this man was arrested by the SEC for suspicious stock market activity. He had turned an $800 investment into $350 million in just 2 weeks. The catch: every single trade he made was flawless, uncanny, impossibly accurate. Under questioning, he supposedly claimed to be a time traveler from 200. No trial, no official records, just gone. Was he real? A media stunt? A planted story? No one knows. The files were sealed. But stories like this keep coming. People waking up in the wrong year. Travelers with passports from countries that never existed. Devices discovered in ancient ruins that resemble modern tech. The chronovisor, a device rumored to be built by the Vatican that could show images from the past or future, supposedly developed by Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk, and later suppressed. Or Project Pegasus, alleged government experiments in the. A man named Andrew Basiago claims he was one of them, that he saw Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, that he visited Mars, that other world leaders were involved. Sounds insane, but every so often, someone else comes forward. Similar story, similar details, too alike to ignore. And then there's the Philadelphia experiment, supposedly a U.S. Navy project in 1943 to make the USS Eldridge invisible to radar. Witnesses claimed the ship didn't just disappear, it teleported. Some say it traveled through time, others say crew members were fused into the ship's hull, melting, screaming, forever stuck between dimensions. Was it an accident or a test run? Think about it. If time travel were possible, would we even know? What if it's not some dramatic DeLorean moment, but subtle shifts? What if déjà vu is a glitch from timeline overlap? What if your memories don't match because you jumped timelines last night and didn't realize it? What if dreams are bleed-throughs from alternate versions of your life? Some scientists entertain closed time-like curves, loops in space-time where particles can loop back and interact with themselves. Others talk about wormholes, quantum entanglement, tachyons, all real concepts, all theoretical windows to time manipulation. But maybe the tech already exists, just not for us. Maybe time travel isn't public because it can't be, because knowing the future changes it, because access creates paradox, power, chaos, so it stays buried. Rumored, denied, until it leaks in small ways. A man with 2 perfect stock picks, a forum post that predicts the unraveling of society, a photo from the 1940s of a man with modern sunglasses and a digital camera, a woman in a 1920s film who appears to be talking on a cell phone, artifacts that don't fit, people who don't belong. And here's a chilling thought. What if you are the time traveler? What if your hunches, your instincts, your inexplicable fears or attachments are echoes from other timelines? What if you've lived this moment before and forgot? What if this entire life is a second run, a do-over, and the real story is what you chose differently this time? So as you drift off tonight, pay attention to your dreams, to the symbols, the sudden memories that don't quite fit. They might be notes from another you, reminders of paths not taken or about to be. 9/11 codes, September 11, 2001. Everyone remembers where they were, what they saw, what they felt. It was a day of horror, shock, and unimaginable grief. But in the years that followed, something else began to creep in. Questions, inconsistencies, details that didn't line up. And then came the codes, symbols, numbers, and coincidences too strange to ignore. This isn't about whether it was an inside job. This is about the web of bizarre connections that surround the event, and the growing suspicion that 9/11 wasn't just a tragedy, it was a ritual. Let's start with the basics. 2 planes, 2 towers. Flight 11 hits the North Tower. Flight 175 hits the South. Then Flight 77 hits the Pentagon. Flight 93 crashes in Pennsylvania. Now go deeper. Flight 77, crashing into the Pentagon, hit the recently renovated section with the fewest people inside. The part reinforced for an attack. The only section with recently updated surveillance. Coincidence or precision? The towers fell in near freefall speed, straight down, as if every support beam failed simultaneously. Many engineers and architects have questioned this. Steel melting points, structural failure. Symmetry. Then there's World Trade Center 7, a third building not hit by any plane. It collapsed hours later, perfectly, like a controlled demolition. News outlets even reported its collapse before it happened, on live TV. And then there's the symbolism. The Twin Towers themselves, 11, a number long associated with duality, gateways, hidden knowledge. Flight 77 had 64 people on board. 6 plus 4 equals 10. Flight 93, 9 plus 3 equals 12. 10, 11, 12, 13. Sequential numbers, embedded patterns, hidden order and apparent chaos. Then there's the number of victims, 29 together, 9/11. A 1996 album cover by the band Coup shows the towers exploding. In 2000, a pilot for a show called The Lone Gunman, an X-Files spin-off, features a plot where a plane is remotely hijacked and flown into the World Trade Center to spark war. It aired in March 2001, 6 months before the real thing. And if you dig further, you find connections to Freemasonry, to ancient rituals of fire and sacrifice, to the concept of the phoenix, death followed by rebirth. The Pentagon itself began construction on September 11, 1941, exactly 60 years before the attack. That's not random. That's design. A full circle, a closing of a loop. Some theorists claim 9/11 was a mass psychological operation, a trauma spell, an event designed not just to kill, but to reshape global consciousness, to install fear, to rewrite laws, to open a new era of surveillance, war, obedience. And when people are in fear, they're easier to steer, easier to mold. They look to authority. They stop asking questions. They trade freedom for security. Patriot Act. Homeland Security. TSA. Terms we hadn't heard before 9/11 that are now permanent parts of our lives. And what about the people behind the curtain? The ones who stood to gain? Defense contractors, oil giants, intelligence agencies, surveillance tech companies, politicians with war agendas. Who got richer? Who got power? Who vanished into classified budgets? These are the codes, not numbers on a page, but patterns of influence, threads of motive, symbols that repeat. The more you see, the harder it is to unsee. It's not about denying the tragedy. It's about realizing it may have served more than one purpose, that it may have been layered, an event with visible pain and invisible profit. And maybe the codes weren't just clues. Maybe they were signatures, the kind left by people who think they're untouchable, the kind that say, we did this, and there's nothing you can do. So as you lie in bed, let your mind turn this over. The day that changed the world, the day that's still changing it, and ask yourself, what was 9/11 really about? Fear? Power? Or was it a key to a much bigger door? Saturn worship. When people think of ancient gods, they think of myths, of stories, of civilizations long gone. But what if some of those gods never left? What if one of them, Saturn, has been worshipped in secret for thousands of years and still is today? Before that, he was Cronus in Greek mythology, the god of time, decay, cycles, harvest, and child sacrifice. He devoured his own offspring to prevent being overthrown. A dark, cold deity. And here's the strange part. His symbols, his numbers, his associations, they all pop up in the modern world, over and over. Let's start with the most obvious one, Saturday. Saturn's Day. The only day of the week still directly named after a Roman god. And in many occult traditions, Saturday is considered the most potent day for dark rituals. Coincidence? Look at the color black. The black robe worn by judges, priests, academics. That tradition traces back to Saturn. In ancient times, Saturn was associated with the color black, with authority, control, finality. The black cube is another recurring symbol, found in Mecca, found in corporate logos, found in avant-garde art and modern architecture. Why a cube? Because when you unfold a cube, it becomes a cross, a symbol of sacrifice, of death, of rebirth. Think about the black cube from the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey. Think about the black cubes on office towers, in video games, in science fiction. These aren't just design choices, they're echoes. Rituals hidden in plain sight. In astrology, Saturn is known as the taskmaster, the keeper of karma, the planet of rules and punishment. It's feared and revered. When people say they're going through a Saturn return, they mean their life is being torn apart and rebuilt. It's not just cosmic, it's alchemical. In ancient texts, Saturn was linked to El, the Semitic god from which many modern terms derive, Elohim. Elder, elect, elite. Saturn was the hidden god, the one worshipped in secret under other names. And then there's the ring symbolism. Saturn is the only planet in our solar system with massive visible rings. And those rings have become icons, wedding rings, crowns, halos, circles of time, circles of control. Some theorists suggest these aren't just metaphors. They claim Saturn emits a powerful frequency, a low humming vibration recorded by NASA, and that this frequency affects Earth, influences thought, behavior, consciousness. In this theory, Saturn isn't just a planet, it's a broadcast, a spiritual signal, a prison even, a control grid. They point to the hexagon storm on Saturn's north pole, a six-sided geometric shape, perfect, stable, impossible to explain with normal physics. Hexagon, 6 sides, 6 angles, 6 points, 666. And yes, it gets darker. Some believe Saturn is the real god behind many modern religions, that the worship of Saturn was never abandoned, only rebranded, that crosses halos the concept of Father Time. Even Santa Claus with his white beard and black boots are all veiled Saturn archetypes. Santa, Saturn, rearranged letters, the same red and white, the same symbolism. And the rituals never stopped. They just went corporate. Think of logos: Nike, Saturn cars, Target, circles, rings, cubes. Think of holidays. Saturnalia, the Roman festival honoring Saturn, was a week-long period of chaos, gift-giving, role reversal, precursor to Christmas. So what if the god of time and control still holds sway? What if all this symbolism isn't accidental, but part of a psychological spiritual system designed to bind, to limit, to keep us running in loops? Worship doesn't always mean altars and chants. Sometimes it's repetition. Habits, subconscious triggers, that black robe you wear to graduation, that mortarboard cap, shaped like a flat square, is a symbolic black cube. You walk into the world of power through Saturn's gate. You bow to the god of rules and structure. You do it without even realizing. That's how deep it goes. So as you close your eyes, ask yourself, who benefits from control? Who builds systems of debt, time, punishment, and obedience? And what if those systems aren't new, but ancient? Saturn was the god of the golden age and the god of the fall. Maybe he's still here. Maybe the real question isn't whether Saturn is being worshipped, but whether you've been worshiping him too. Dead internet. There's a theory floating around online that the internet as we know it died somewhere between 2016 and 2018, not in a literal cables cut kind of way, but in the sense that the soul of the internet, the human part, quietly disappeared. What replaced it? Bots, algorithms, ghosts of real users long gone. It's called the dead internet theory, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Think about it. Do you ever scroll through social media and feel like everything looks the same? The same recycled content, the same tweets, the same opinions slightly reworded, comments that feel off, robotic, too generic, posts with no engagement suddenly going viral, entire threads that feel manufactured. That's what this theory is about, that most of the internet is no longer real, that human activity online is now the minority, that most of what you're reading, liking, arguing with wasn't written by a person. And here's the thing, it's not science fiction. We know that bots exist, that AI-generated content is already widespread, that comment farms, fake reviews, and synthetic influencers are part of the online ecosystem. What the dead internet theory suggests is that it's worse than anyone wants to admit, that the platforms themselves, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, even Google, are flooded with fake users, not just for marketing, not just to push products, but to shape culture, influence opinion, control narratives. If an idea gets repeated enough, it becomes normal. If a political stance gets echoed enough, it feels mainstream, even if it never had grassroots support to begin with. That's the power of bots. They don't need to convince everyone. They just need to make enough noise that you think you're outnumbered, or worse, that you stop speaking altogether. You've probably noticed this. A weird trend suddenly dominates the front page. A meme goes viral overnight, pushed by accounts with no profile picture, no real history. Or maybe you see hundreds of comments supporting a strange opinion, all posted within minutes of each other. You're not imagining it. There are now AI models that can generate convincing tweets, articles, video scripts, even fake conversations. There are deepfake influencers with millions of followers, all scripted by marketing teams. There are subreddit threads where every comment is an echo chamber, shaped by mod teams who follow invisible guidelines. And it's not just social media. Some say the majority of the surface web is AI written, filler blogs, fake news, clickbait loops. Even the reviews on Amazon or TripAdvisor, half of them could be synthetic. The goal? Flood the zone. Make it harder to find real people, real voices, real thoughts. Some even say Google search results have become a hall of mirrors. SEO-optimized junk sites rising to the top, burying real content 5 pages deep. The illusion of variety, but everything leading back to the same sources. Why would this happen? Some blame governments who want to influence public perception without appearing authoritarian. Others blame corporations who want to dominate attention, steer emotions, and automate customer engagement. Still others blame the platforms themselves who want constant engagement, even if it's faked, because bots never sleep, never take breaks, never get offended. And as user numbers plateau, bot numbers rise. So metrics stay high, stock prices stay happy, and you, the real human, are left shouting into a void filled with ghosts. There's something deeply unsettling about realizing the internet may no longer be a human space, that it's become a stage play, scripted, rehearsed, performed. And maybe the most disturbing part is this: if you log off, it keeps going. The tweets still tweet, the arguments still rage, the news still flows, all without you, all without anyone. It's like a city running on autopilot long after the citizens have left. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we were never supposed to notice. But once you do, you start questioning everything. Who's behind that viral post? Who really wrote that article? Who are you arguing with at 2 a.m.? Is there anyone there at all? So tonight, as you close your eyes, ask yourself how much of what you see online is real? How many of your thoughts are reactions to manufactured noise? And what does it mean if the internet, the thing that once connected us, is now just a ghost town with the lights still on? Celebrity clones. The most famous example is Paul McCartney. Fans have long claimed that the real Paul died in 1966 and was replaced by a look-alike. They point to changes in his voice, his facial structure, even his songwriting style. There are alleged clues hidden in Beatles songs, album art, and lyrics, like the phrase "Paul is dead," backmasked into tracks. But it doesn't stop there. Think of Eminem. Around 2006, his appearance began to change. His jawline, his eyes. Fans noticed his energy was different, his voice flatter, his interviews more robotic. He disappeared for a while, then came back looking suspiciously plastic. Some believe he was cloned after a medical issue. Others believe he was simply replaced. Then there's Avril Lavigne. The theory goes that she died in the early 2000s and was swapped out by a body double named Melissa. Fans cite shifts in style, signature, even facial features. It sounds absurd, but the theory won't die because the new Avril behaves differently, speaks differently. She once joked about it in an interview, but maybe that's how they hide it. Laugh it off. Let the public mock the idea before it gains traction. Beyoncé, Katy Perry, Britney Spears, all have been accused of being replaced, not just once, but potentially multiple times. Different public appearances showing subtle changes, height discrepancies, face-shaped fluctuations, and here's where it gets darker. Some say cloning is only part of it, that the entertainment industry and its elite circles have access to advanced technology decades ahead of the public. That cloning isn't sci-fi, it's classified. That early human cloning was achieved long ago in underground facilities. That celebrities, especially young ones, are groomed, scanned, and copied, so that if they deviate from their programming, they can be swapped. Silently, cleanly, no questions. One version disappears, another takes their place. Some claim clones are kept in deep freeze until needed. Others think the replacements are synthetic humans, hyper-realistic androids powered by advanced AI. Think about how many times a celebrity goes through a public breakdown, followed by a rehab stint, then comes back clean, better, transformed. What if that's the switch? What if rehab is the story that explains the gap? And while they're gone, the new model steps in. Why do this? Control. Clones don't rebel. They don't age like normal humans. They don't leak secrets. And if the real person was becoming a liability, a threat, or just inconvenient, problem solved. The machine keeps moving. Some theorists link this to MK Ultra and trauma-based mind control. They suggest celebrities are assets, carefully managed personas, not just for entertainment, but for influence. They shape trends, opinions, ideals, and if you can replicate the puppet, you never lose control of the stage. Even weirder, some celebrities have hinted at it. Nicki Minaj once joked that she's a clone. Gucci Mane said it outright in a post-prison interview. He didn't even recognize himself in old photos. "I'm a clone," he laughed. Was it a joke or a confession hidden in plain sight? Then there's the music videos, performances, and award shows filled with themes of doubles, mirrors, puppets, and replacements. Rebirth, death, transformation, over and over. Do they know? Are they in on it? Or are the real ones long gone, and all we have now are copies playing their parts? That's the question. The scary part is, if they can clone celebrities, who else can they clone? Politicians? CEOs? Scientists? And if you don't notice, if the swap is clean, does it even matter? So tonight, as you let your mind drift, think about who you've been watching. That pop star with the 1,000-yard stare. That actor who suddenly can't remember his old roles. That familiar face that suddenly feels unfamiliar. Are they real? Or is the real version buried in silence while their replacement dances on stage, flawless, tireless, and empty inside? Antarctica secrets. At the bottom of the world lies a frozen desert, silent and massive, untouched by most of humanity. Antarctica, a continent locked in ice, governed by an international treaty that prevents ownership, mining, and military activity. Sounds peaceful, sounds reasonable, but dig deeper, and something doesn't add up. The question isn't why Antarctica is so empty, it's why it's so protected. And what's really hiding under all that ice? Let's start with Operation High Jump. In 1946, just after World War II, the United States launched one of the largest military expeditions in history to Antarctica. Led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd, it included 13 ships, 4,700 men, and full combat equipment. The official reason? They had aircraft carriers, destroyers, tanks. And here's the strange part. The operation was cut short. They left early. Byrd himself said afterward that the next war would be fought in the polar regions, against flying objects that could move from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Let that sink in. Then look at the Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 by over 50 nations. It bans military activity, mining, and land ownership. No other place on Earth has this kind of agreement. Countries that can't agree on anything else agree on this. Why? Because there's something there. Something they don't want the rest of us finding. Some believe it's alien, that ancient craft or bases lie beneath the ice, buried for thousands of years, that the melting glaciers are starting to reveal what's been hidden. There have been satellite images showing strange shapes, entrances carved into mountains, blacked out zones. Google Earth has blurred entire sections. Why? If it's just ice, why hide it? Others say the Nazis discovered something there during World War II, that they established bases, conducted occult rituals, and found ancient technology, maybe even made contact with non-human entities. This is where the rumors of Base 2011 come in, a secret Nazi fortress buried in the ice, abandoned or still active, depending on who you ask. And here's where it gets weirder. Why are high-ranking officials so obsessed with visiting Antarctica? John Kerry visited during the 2016 U.S. election. Buzz Aldrin, after visiting, tweeted, "We are all in danger. It is evil itself," then deleted it. Russian Orthodox priests have gone there. Popes, tech CEOs. Why? What are they being shown? What are they doing there? There's also the theory of the firmament, the idea that the Earth is enclosed and Antarctica is the wall, that if you cross far enough beyond the ice, you hit the edge, that the governments of the world have agreed to keep that secret hidden. Flights over the South Pole are restricted. No-fly zones exist in areas with no civilization. Scientific research is heavily monitored, but no one talks about that. Instead, we're told it's just penguins and research stations, that there's nothing to see. But there's always something to see when people go to great lengths to say there's nothing. Ancient maps show Antarctica free of ice, accurately. The Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513, depicts the Antarctic coast in shocking detail. How? The continent wasn't officially discovered until 1820. Were those maps copies of even older sources? Did ancient civilizations explore Antarctica before it froze? That raises the biggest question of all. What was Antarctica before it was covered in ice? What if it was a thriving land with cities, cultures, maybe even something non-human? Some ancient astronaut theorists suggest Antarctica could be Atlantis, that it wasn't sunk but shifted, moved in a cataclysm, covered by ice in one day. And beneath the snow lies the truth of humanity's origin, a truth too explosive for public knowledge. And every expedition, every satellite, every scientific discovery, there is actually part of an ongoing effort to map and monitor what's emerging as the ice melts. So as you lay back, imagine this: an entire continent filled with secrets, locked away by treaties, guarded by governments, and whispered about only in the corners of the internet. What's under the ice? Who or what is it being kept from? Or maybe, who is it being kept for? Mandela effect? You remember something clearly, a fact, a name, a moment. You'd bet money on it? But when you look it up, it's different. Not just slightly off, but completely rewritten. And everyone else insists it's always been that way. That feeling of shared false memory? That's the Mandela effect. And it's not just a brain glitch. Some believe it's evidence that reality itself is shifting, that timelines are colliding or rewriting, and we're catching the seams. The term came from people collectively remembering Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. Entire swaths of the population recall news coverage, public mourning, even funerals. But he didn't die until 20. Remember the day it happened, but according to history, it never did. That's just the beginning. Let's test your memory. Is it Berenstain Bears or Berenstain Bears? Most remember the first, Berenstain. But go check your old books. They all say Berenstain now. Is it Looney Tunes or Looney Tunes? You probably remember tunes like cartoons, but officially, it's always been tunes. Curious George? Did he have a tail? Everyone thinks so, but he doesn't. Never did, apparently. Mirror, mirror on the wall. That's how the evil queen addresses her mirror in Snow White, right? Wrong. Now it's magic mirror on the wall. Go watch it. Listen closely. It's never been mirror, mirror, except you know it was. You can feel it. You've heard it. Said it. And yet the official record disagrees. Now zoom out. These aren't just pop culture errors. Some people claim the location of countries has shifted, that South America used to be directly under North America, not off to the side, that New Zealand was northeast of Australia, not southeast, that the human heart used to be on the left side of the chest, not dead center. And then there are product logos. Kit Kat with a hyphen? No, there never was one. Fruit of the Loom's cornucopia? Doesn't exist, never did. Yet thousands, maybe millions, remember these details exactly, unshakably. And it's not just memory. Some say this points to alternate timelines merging, that what we're seeing are bleed-throughs from parallel realities, that somewhere, in another branch of the multiverse, these things did exist, and we're remembering our time there, not here. Others think it's a result of CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, messing with the fabric of space and time. The theory goes, when they activated the Large Hadron Collider, something shifted, a timeline snapped, realities fused, or we were pulled into a slightly different version of Earth, not enough to notice day to day, but enough for these strange cracks to show. Some believe Mandela effect is a psyop, a psychological operation to confuse the population, gaslight them into doubting their own memories, make them more suggestible, more dependent on official sources. Because when you can't trust your own mind, you're easier to control, and maybe that's the real conspiracy, a slow erosion of internal certainty. So what's actually happening? Are we hopping timelines, experiencing glitches in a simulation, or is something or someone actively rewriting the past? Ask yourself this: how much of your memory is truly yours? And what if the world did change and only a few of us noticed? Maybe these changes aren't errors, maybe they're edits. And if someone is editing reality, you have to wonder why. What are they trying to erase or replace or hide? As you drift to sleep tonight, remember this: if the past isn't fixed, if history can be rewritten, then nothing is safe. Not even your memories. Moon landing hoax. It's one of the most iconic moments in human history. July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong steps off the lunar module and declares, "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." The American flag flutters proudly, and Earth watches in awe. But here's the thing: what if it never happened? What if the entire moon landing was a carefully crafted illusion filmed on Earth, not 38,000 miles away? That's the theory. And it's not just fringe tinfoil talk. There are inconsistencies, strange anomalies, and unanswered questions that refuse to go away. First, the flag. In NASA's own footage, the American flag appears to wave. But there's no atmosphere on the moon, no wind. How could a flag ripple in a vacuum? NASA later said it was caused by the motion of the astronauts planting it. But even then, the flag seems to move long after they've let go. Then there's the lighting. Multiple shadows falling in different directions, as if from multiple light sources. But the only light on the moon should be the sun. And in some photos, objects in deep shadow are lit clearly, impossible without artificial lighting. It's as if the scene was staged under studio lights. The backgrounds in some photos are suspiciously identical, even though they were supposedly taken miles apart. Identical hills, same formations, like a set being reused. The lunar module itself looks flimsy, like something built from tinfoil, curtain rods, and duct tape. Could that really have survived a launch, space travel, and a moon landing? And where was the blast crater? That massive descent engine should have kicked up dust, left a mark. But the surface beneath the module is untouched, pristine, like it was gently placed. Now think about this. In the 1960s, computers were barely strong enough to run simple programs. Yet NASA supposedly executed a flawless lunar mission using less processing power than a modern calculator. And they did it not once, but 6 times. Then, mysteriously, they lost the original telemetry data, all of it, gone. The original moon landing tapes, misplaced, deleted, erased. NASA said they recorded over them to save money. The most important footage in human history, wiped. Why? Stanley Kubrick is often dragged into this theory. The claim is that he was hired to direct the fake moon footage using the same groundbreaking techniques he used in 2000. Kubrick's meticulous style, attention to realism, and secrecy made him the perfect candidate. Some even point to hidden messages in his later films, especially The Shining. They say Danny, wearing an Apollo 11 sweater, walking on a hexagonal carpet pattern like the launch pad, is Kubrick confessing through symbolism. Even Buzz Aldrin, when pressed about the landing, sometimes reacts strangely. There's a famous clip of him telling a little girl, "We didn't go there." Was it a slip, a joke, or a rare moment of truth? And consider this, why haven't we gone back? In over 50 years, with exponentially better technology, no human has set foot on the moon again. NASA says it's too expensive, too risky. But we're sending robots to Mars. We have billionaires launching themselves into orbit. Yet the moon remains untouched. Some say it's because we were never there. Others think we did go, but what we found wasn't meant to be seen. Structures, signals, something that sent us running back to Earth and locking the door behind us. Whatever the case, the moon landing isn't beyond questioning. And when governments lie, when institutions protect themselves, when history is written by the powerful, you have to wonder. Was it a show? A Cold War performance to beat the Soviets? A distraction? A ritual? As you lay in the dark, picture that grainy footage, the black sky, the slow motion steps, the flag waving and nothing, and ask yourself, do you believe what you were told, or are you ready to consider that mankind's greatest leap might have never left the ground? HAARP, weather control, deep in the wilderness of Alaska, nestled between mountain ranges and snow, sits a facility that looks like a giant forest of antennas. It's called HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Officially, it's a scientific research station built to study the ionosphere, that high, thin layer of Earth's atmosphere. But to some, HAARP is much more than that. It's a weather weapon, a mind control device, a tool for global manipulation hidden in plain sight. First, what HAARP actually does, it beams high-frequency radio waves into the ionosphere, heating it and creating artificial auroras. The idea is to study how energy moves through the atmosphere. But critics ask, if you can heat the ionosphere in one place, what else can you do? Could you shift jet streams, cause droughts, trigger hurricanes or earthquakes? Here's where things get strange. In the years after HAARP began active operations in the 90s, we saw a dramatic uptick in extreme weather events. Massive hurricanes hitting unlikely places, heat waves, unseasonal blizzards, earthquakes with no fault line activity. Some researchers point to data spikes, ionospheric disturbances, moments before major disasters. Earthquakes in Haiti, Tsunamis in Japan, floods in Pakistan. Is it coincidence? Or were those disasters artificially induced? HAARP's power levels are off the charts. It can beam billions of watts into the sky, and that energy doesn't just disappear. It bounces, it refracts, it can potentially ripple through Earth's magnetic field. Some conspiracy theorists believe HAARP can steer the weather, not just modify it, but weaponize it. Imagine being able to cripple an enemy without ever firing a missile. You flood their cities, fry their crops, cause famine without blame, no fingerprints, no trail, just natural disasters. And it's not just America. China, Russia, and the EU all have similar ionospheric heating programs. If it's just science, why are militaries involved? Why are these installations shrouded in secrecy, guarded, and buried under layers of classified research? Then there's the theory of mind control. HAARP operates on frequencies close to the human brain's natural rhythms. Some suggest those waves could influence moods, induce confusion, or trigger aggression. Ever have a day where everyone seems off? Where arguments break out for no reason? Where emotions feel amped up, like the air is buzzing? Could it be the result of directed energy? Could an entire population be manipulated without knowing it? Look at the sky. In recent years, people have reported bizarre cloud patterns, perfectly straight lines, grids, ripple effects. Some link these to HAARP, suggesting that atmospheric heating changes how clouds form. Others connect it to chemtrails, saying the chemical aerosols released by planes make the sky more conductive for HAARP's beams. In this theory, planes lay the groundwork and HAARP fires the shot. Critics, of course, call all of this nonsense. They say HAARP's capabilities are overhyped, that weather is complex and uncontrollable, that the data doesn't add up. But here's the thing, the US military has openly admitted to researching weather modification as a weapon. Documents exist, plans were drafted. If they were looking into it decades ago, what do you think they have now? And why is HAARP so closely monitored? Why are visits restricted? Why has it changed hands multiple times, from the Air Force to private contractors to universities, and yet still remains opaque? As you drift off tonight, listen to the silence outside, the stillness of the wind, the rhythm of rain or absence of it, and ask yourself, how much control do we really have? And how much control have we handed over to machines in remote places, to projects that never ask permission, to forces that can shape the sky itself? Denver Airport. At first glance, Denver International Airport seems like any other airport. Big, busy, unremarkable. But once you start paying attention, the place feels wrong. There's something eerie about it, something too strange to ignore. From its bizarre artwork to its mysterious construction, Denver Airport is a goldmine for conspiracy theorists, and the deeper you look, the weirder it gets. Let's start with the most obvious symbol, the Blue Horse. Officially named Blue Mustang, but locals call it Blucifer. It's a massive, 32-foot-tall fiberglass sculpture with glowing red eyes, rearing on its hind legs like it's possessed. It killed its creator, Luis Jimenez, when part of it fell and severed an artery in his leg. The horse itself looks demonic, unnatural, not exactly a welcoming mascot for travelers. But Blucifer is just the beginning. Inside the airport are murals, huge ones, that seem ripped from a dystopian nightmare. One shows a gas-masked soldier with a sword, trampling children. Another shows a line of weeping mothers holding dead babies wrapped in flags. Then there's one with animals locked in glass cases, surrounded by fire. Officially, they're meant to represent war, peace, and environmental responsibility. But many believe they hint at something darker, something prophetic, something planned, hidden in plain sight. Then there's the dedication stone. It has the Freemason symbol on it, along with a reference to the New World Airport Commission. That organization doesn't exist. Never has. Try to look it up, you'll hit a dead end. Some say that plaque is more than ceremonial. It's a capstone, possibly covering a time capsule filled with secrets. Construction of the airport itself was a mess of confusion and overspending. It went $2 billion over budget. Multiple contractors were hired and then fired. Each one only worked on isolated sections. Why? Some say it was to keep anyone from knowing the full layout. The theory is that beneath the airport lies a massive underground facility, bunkers, tunnels, entire cities. Some say it's a military base. Others say it's a FEMA camp or an elite survival bunker for the end of the world. And then there's the runway layout. From above, it forms a shape suspiciously similar to a swastika. Coincidence? Maybe. But if you're designing one of the largest airports in the world, wouldn't someone notice that? Add to that the strange things people have reported: automated voice glitches in the tram tunnels, locked doors that go nowhere, workers who disappear for hours underground. There are whispers that Denver is the hub for a global shadow government, that if society collapses, this is where the elites will retreat. Some even think it's connected to extraterrestrial activity, that the tunnels are a staging ground for beings not of this world, or perhaps it's just a testing ground for psychological manipulation. Flood a public space with unsettling art, obscure messages, and symbols, and see how people react. See if they question. See if they obey. Denver Airport invites those questions because nothing about it feels accidental. Not the art, not the construction, not the secrecy. As you imagine walking through those halls tonight, remember this: the strangest part isn't what's visible, it's what might be miles beneath your feet. Bohemian Grove, tucked away in the redwood forests of Northern California, is a 2007 U.S. presidents, world leaders, military generals, media moguls, tech billionaires, and corporate giants have all reportedly been in attendance. What do they do there? That's the unsettling part. For 2 weeks every July, the world's elite disappear into the woods and leave behind their suits, titles, and public faces. They drink, they party, they give speeches, and, according to many, they perform strange occult rituals under the cover of night. One of the most infamous ceremonies is called the cremation of care. It takes place at the base of a 40-foot stone owl, yes, an enormous stone owl, while men in robes chant, light fires, and perform a mock human sacrifice. The idea, they say, is symbolic. They're burning away the stress and burdens of the outside world, but it's deeply theatrical, ritualistic, and eerily precise. Why would world leaders engage in something like that? And why the secrecy? Cameras are banned, phones are confiscated, security is tight, staff are sworn to silence. For years, the public knew almost nothing about what happened inside the Grove. That changed in 2000 when journalist Alex Jones and filmmaker Mike Hansen infiltrated the gathering and captured grainy footage of the cremation of care ceremony. It showed exactly what people had whispered about: hooded figures, flames, and eerie chanting under a giant owl. It looked less like a camping trip and more like a cult ritual. Skeptics brush it off as harmless pageantry, just rich guys blowing off steam. But here's the question: why are the most powerful men on Earth spending time in the woods, dressed in robes, pretending to sacrifice humans in front of a pagan owl statue? Why not a golf course? Why not a yacht? And then there's the owl itself, Moloch, some say, an ancient deity associated with child sacrifice. Is that coincidence, symbolism, or something more literal? The Grove also has what's called the Lakeside Talks, off-the-record speeches given by politicians, economists, generals, and media figures. No press, no recordings. It's said that major global decisions have been made here. Strategy discussed, wars hinted at, policy drafted, in secret, far from the public eye. Richard Nixon attended Bohemian Grove and later called it the most faggy goddamn thing you could ever imagine. But he still went. So did Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush. Bill Clinton denied going until he was pressed and laughed it off. George W. Bush went with his father. Even tech leaders like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos are rumored to have attended. The membership list is secret, but leaks and reports paint a clear picture. This is where influence gathers, where ideology is shaped, and yet most people have never heard of it. The mainstream media rarely mentions it, and when it does, it's framed as a quirky tradition, nothing to see here. But if it's truly nothing, why the secrecy? Why the walls? Why the rituals? Some believe Bohemian Grove is a node in a global web of hidden power, a place where decisions are made that affect economies, wars, elections, a playground for the elite to whisper and plan while the world spins outside. So as you lie still and let your mind wander, picture a firelit forest, the rustle of redwoods, and a voice echoing through the trees, weaving spiders, come not here. That's the Grove's motto: no scheming, no networking. But maybe, just maybe, that's the biggest lie of all: reptilian elite. This one sounds like science fiction, like the plot of a campy 80s movie or a late-night cartoon. But once you start pulling the threads, you'll realize how far it stretches. The reptilian elite theory is the belief that many of the most powerful figures in the world, politicians, royalty, media moguls, celebrities, aren't human at all. They're shape-shifting reptilian beings, wearing human skin like a costume. And they've been doing it for thousands of years. It all started with David Icke, a former footballer and BBC presenter turned conspiracy researcher. In the 1990s, Icke claimed he uncovered a global plot involving ancient bloodlines, extraterrestrial manipulation, and hidden rulers. According to him, these reptilian beings, also called archons or Anunnaki, come from another dimension or star system, often linked to the constellation Draco. They came to Earth long ago, interbred with humans, and have been guiding our history ever since. Pharaohs, kings, emperors, most were hybrids. In modern times, that bloodline continues through politicians, royal families, and corporate dynasties. Ever notice how the same families keep showing up in power? Bush, Clinton, Windsor, Rockefeller, Rothschild. That's not coincidence, the theory says. It's bloodline preservation, a way to keep the reptilian genetic code intact. But what do they want? Control. Reptilians, in this theory, feed on fear and negative emotion. The more chaos, war, suffering, and division in the world, the more energy they harvest. They don't want peace, they want panic. So they install leaders who create instability, stage false flags, manipulate the media, and keep the population distracted, angry, and afraid. Sound familiar? There are videos online, grainy footage, slowed down, of politicians' eyes shifting, pupils going vertical, tongues flicking unnaturally. Are they doctored? Maybe. Even the Bible talks about the serpent in the garden, the dragon in Revelation. Is it symbolic? Or are these cultural echoes of something real, something ancient and terrifying? Some say reptilians reside in underground bases, that deep beneath cities, mountains, and military installations, they operate in secrecy, that they've infiltrated human society not with brute force, but with bureaucracy, laws, elections, celebrities, screens. Others believe they're interdimensional, phasing in and out of this reality, that most people can't see them because our perception is limited, but under the right conditions, altered consciousness, extreme stress, or heightened awareness, the veil slips, and the truth flashes through. There are stories of people meeting government officials or celebrities who suddenly glitched, whose faces flickered, whose eyes went cold and inhuman, and they remember that moment forever. Then there's the symbolism. Snakes, eyes, obelisks, scales. Why do these symbols keep showing up in elite architecture, branding, and rituals? Why are they obsessed with control, hierarchy, and surveillance? Some say the reptilian agenda is to slowly merge their consciousness with ours, to eventually replace humanity with a hybrid race that's easier to control. That the rise of transhumanism, digital ID, and AI is part of this plan, because once we're disconnected from nature, from intuition, from spirit, we're easier prey. But here's the real question. Does it matter if they're actually reptilian? Or just humans who act like them? Cold, power-hungry, deceptive. Maybe reptilian is a metaphor for the kind of energy that seeks control through fear. Or maybe it's literal, and the people pulling the strings are not people at all. So as you lie back in the dark, think about the ones in charge. The ones you never voted for, never met, never truly understood. What if behind their smiles, there are scales? Hollow Earth, picture this. Earth isn't solid all the way through. Beneath the crust, beyond the mantle, there isn't just molten rock. There's a vast hidden world. Oceans, forests, mountains, entire civilizations. That's the Hollow Earth theory, and it's been around longer than you think. The idea dates back centuries, with versions appearing in ancient myths, scientific papers, and even early polar expeditions. In the 17th century, astronomer Edmund Halley, the same Halley as in Halley's Comet, proposed that Earth consisted of concentric shells, each nested within the other like Russian dolls. He even thought these inner layers might host life. Fast forward to the early 1900s, enter Admiral Richard E. Byrd, an American explorer who flew missions over both the North and South Poles. In his journals, disputed but widely circulated, Byrd describes flying into a massive hole at the North Pole and discovering lush vegetation, warm air, and strange, advanced beings who communicated telepathically. He referred to this place as the Inner Earth. In his account, these beings warned him about humanity's use of nuclear weapons and the danger we pose to ourselves. Byrd claimed he was debriefed, silenced, and that his records were classified. Mainstream history writes this off as fiction, But the US government did launch a number of unusual missions to the poles shortly after. Coincidence or containment? Now let's talk geography. Antarctica is largely unexplored. Satellite images often blur or block out large sections of it. Commercial flights avoid direct routes over both poles. Why? Some say it's for safety. Others believe the entrances to Hollow Earth lie there, giant caverns that open into another world. And not just any world. A place with its own sun, sometimes called the inner sun. A glowing core that illuminates this hidden ecosystem. A gravity shift that allows massive creatures to live, dinosaurs perhaps, or even beings we'd consider mythological. Ancient legends from all over the world speak of underground realms. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's Agartha, a subterranean kingdom ruled by enlightened beings. Native American lore speaks of star people who came from inside the earth. The Hopi talk about ant people who sheltered their ancestors underground during cataclysms. Even the Bible references the bowels of the earth and underworlds with gates and cities. Are these symbolic stories or fragmented memories of something real? Then there's the Nazis. Yes, they make their way into this theory too. Hitler was reportedly obsessed with Hollow Earth. Some believe he sent expeditions to Antarctica to find entrances, and that they established bases inside the planet. There are even theories that some Nazi leaders escaped into Hollow Earth after World War II, beyond the reach of modern nations. Think that's too wild? The US military actually conducted extensive research into polar regions after the war, building bases and launching surveillance. They were looking for something, and if it was just snow and rock, why the urgency? Some modern theorists believe Hollow Earth isn't just physical, but dimensional, that the openings are portals, not just down, but through, places where space-time behaves differently, places where ancient beings or lost civilizations still exist. Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, maybe they didn't sink, maybe they went within. The deepest caves on Earth haven't been fully explored. There are giant sinkholes in China and Vietnam with entire ecosystems inside. What if those are just the surface? Just breadcrumbs? Critics say there's no evidence, that it defies physics, that seismic data rules it out. But here's the thing, how much of the Earth have we really explored? The deepest hole humans have ever drilled is only about 7.5 miles deep. That's nothing compared to the 4,000-mile radius of Earth. We know more about space than we do about what lies beneath our feet. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine a whole other world under your bedrock, a sky beneath the soil, civilizations waiting in the silence, watching, hidden not because they're gone, but because they chose to stay out of sight. Philadelphia Experiment. In 1943, during the height of World War II, something strange is said to have happened at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, something that would remain buried in rumor and denial for decades. According to conspiracy lore, the U.S. Navy was working on an experiment to make its warships invisible to enemy radar. But instead of just cloaking metal, the project accidentally bent the laws of space and time. The ship at the center of it all? The USS Eldridge. The official story says it was just a destroyer escort ship, doing routine tests. But according to witnesses and whistleblowers, on one particular day in October, the Navy powered up a set of mysterious electromagnetic generators on board, and everything went sideways. Some say the ship disappeared entirely, vanishing from the harbor in a blinding green-blue flash. Moments later, it reappeared, 200 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia, before snapping back to Philadelphia. Others say it didn't just disappear, but phased into another dimension. That for a few terrifying minutes, the USS Eldridge left our reality altogether. But when it came back, things were wrong. Crew members were reportedly found fused into the metal hull. Some were embedded halfway into bulkheads, screaming in agony. Others had vanished entirely, and the ones who survived suffered from strange side effects: disorientation, memory loss, spontaneous teleportation, even claims of being pulled into different times. One sailor supposedly vanished in front of his family during a bar fight, never to be seen again. The story first surfaced through a man named Carl Allen, who went by the alias Carlos Allende. He wrote a series of letters to UFO researcher Morris Jessup, detailing the experiment, the ship, and its catastrophic results. Jessup, a respected scientist, was so disturbed by the letters that he started digging deeper. Soon after, he was found dead in his car, an apparent suicide, but many believe he was silenced. Officially, the U.S. Navy denies everything. They say there was no such experiment, no disappearing ship, no physics-defying technology. But then why were there classified files? Why were multiple sailors suddenly transferred or discharged under strange circumstances? Some connect the Philadelphia experiment to the later Montauk Project, a rumored continuation of time manipulation and psychic experimentation conducted on Long Island. According to these stories, the government didn't stop with one accidental time warp. They tried to weaponize it, harness it, and in doing so, tore holes in the very fabric of reality. Could Einstein's theories on unified fields have played a role? Was Nikola Tesla involved, as some claim, providing blueprints for energy manipulation far beyond what the public knew? The timing fits. Both men had knowledge of electromagnetic fields, zero-point energy, and the theoretical link between gravity and light. What if the Navy succeeded in unlocking that code just briefly and instantly realized they were in way over their heads? The Philadelphia experiment isn't just about one ship. It's about the possibility that the government discovered time travel, interdimensional transport, or invisibility and buried it. And if they did it once, what else have they tried since? As you drift off tonight, think about the ocean, calm on the surface, hiding something beneath. Imagine a ship that vanished, bent time, and came back broken. And ask yourself, if something that powerful slipped through for even a second, what else could slip through next? Black Knight satellite. There's something up there orbiting Earth that shouldn't be. It's not a weather balloon, not space junk, not a rogue satellite. It's been seen by astronauts, picked up on radar, tracked by amateur astronomers for decades, maybe even centuries, and it's not listed in any space agency's catalog. They call it the Black Knight satellite. A name that sounds like science fiction, but the mystery itself is all too real. Here's where it starts to get strange. Long before Sputnik launched he believed they were from another world. Mainstream scientists wrote it off as atmospheric interference, but Tesla was convinced someone or something was trying to communicate. Fast forward to the 1920s, when Norwegian engineer Jørgen Hals began detecting unexplained radio echoes, long delay signals that would bounce back several seconds after being transmitted. No one could explain it. These signals didn't behave like normal radio waves. They were looping around the planet, or something was reflecting them back. Then came the photographs. In 1998, NASA released images taken during the STS-88 space shuttle mission. What they captured was bizarre, an angular dark object orbiting Earth in a strange polar trajectory. It didn't match any known satellite or debris. It wasn't part of any known program. The object looked mechanical, but alien, like a jagged floating relic, completely out of place. And its orbit? That's what really raised eyebrows. Most satellites orbit west to east. It's efficient. That's how we launch them. But the Black Knight, it was going north to south, a polar orbit, something we didn't even attempt until years after the first confirmed sightings. So what is it? A glitch? A shadow? Space junk? NASA says it's a thermal blanket that drifted loose during a mission, but compare the blanket to the Black Knight images side by side, and you'll see they don't match. The shape, the edges, the size, it's different. And then there's the lore. Some say it's 13,000 years old, that it's been circling Earth since before humans had written language, that ancient civilizations, Sumerians, Egyptians, the Olmec, left clues in their architecture and star maps pointing to a foreign presence in the sky. The idea is that the Black Knight is a probe, an alien satellite sent to monitor Earth, a cosmic security camera, watching us evolve, watching us destroy, watching us rebuild, waiting. For what? Maybe contact, maybe chaos, maybe it's just waiting for the right frequency to answer back, and here's where it gets deeper. People have claimed to decode its transmissions, mathematical sequences, binary patterns, star charts. One alleged transmission mapped out the Epsilon Beta star system as the probe's origin point, located 200 light-years from Earth. Pure fiction or a breadcrumb trail? The Black Knight keeps appearing in unexpected places. Reports of it go back to 1954, 3 years before humanity launched anything into orbit. Newspapers at the time mentioned 2 mysterious satellites circling Earth, baffling the Pentagon. The military couldn't explain it. Years later, these mentions were quietly scrubbed. Some say the Black Knight briefly became visible over New York City in the early 60s, a silent black triangle gliding across the night sky, visible without a telescope. Witnesses described it as unnerving, motionless 1 second, moving silently the next. Astronauts have commented cryptically over the years. Gordon Cooper, a Mercury and Gemini astronaut, claimed he saw a glowing green object approaching his capsule. His report was filed and classified. Cooper stuck to his story for decades. Other astronauts have hinted at strange objects following their missions, things they couldn't explain, things that weren't supposed to be there. Is it possible that governments know about the Black Knight and keep quiet? Consider this. If there really is an ancient alien satellite orbiting Earth, admitting it would shake everything, religion, science, power structures, it would force humanity to confront the possibility that we are being watched, that we are not alone, that someone else got here first. And here's the thing. Maybe the Black Knight isn't alien, maybe it's human, from a forgotten civilization, a time before ours. Some believe Earth's history is cyclical, that humanity rises and falls in great waves. The Black Knight could be the last relic of a society long buried, destroyed by its own ambition, sent into orbit to wait for our species to become smart enough to notice, maybe even smart enough to understand. We often think of history as a straight line, but what if it's more like a spiral? Rising, collapsing, rising again. The Black Knight could be the echo of a version of us that reached the stars and vanished. So why doesn't anyone talk about it? Why do governments dodge the question? Why is every official answer so unsatisfying? If it's just a blanket, then show us the proof. If it's a satellite, why isn't it logged? Why does it keep disappearing, then reappearing in different orbits, different configurations as if adapting? Some think it's still active, sending out pulses, scanning, waiting for a response. Others say it's dormant, like a ghost ship in space, a reminder, a warning, or an invitation. And here's the part that stays with you. The Black Knight is silent. It doesn't glow. It doesn't make noise. It's just there, watching. As you fall asleep tonight, picture it drifting above you, high above the clouds, beyond radar, beyond reason. The dark watcher in Earth's orbit, not friend, not enemy, just presence, just mystery, just the thing we're not supposed to see. Project Bluebeam. This one doesn't just blur the line between science and fiction. It rips that line wide open. Project Bluebeam is the idea that governments, in collaboration with powerful tech corporations and shadowy elites, are preparing the ultimate illusion, a staged global event so convincing it would change the course of humanity forever. The goal? A one-world government, a single global religion, total control. And how would they do it? With holograms, satellites, psychological warfare, and advanced frequency manipulation. The theory originated with journalist Serge Monast in the 1990s. He claimed to have uncovered a multi-phase plan designed to simulate the Second Coming or an alien invasion, or both, using a combination of technology and mass deception. Here's how it allegedly works. Step 1 is the breakdown of all archaeological and religious knowledge. The idea is to undermine belief systems and prepare the population for new truths. Ancient secrets get discovered that call into question everything we've ever believed, massive cover-ups exposed, miracles explained away with science, confusion sown deep into cultural roots. Step 2 involves a massive light show in the sky. Using satellites and lasers, the orchestrators will project ultra-realistic holograms across the globe. These won't just be pretty lights. They'll be personalized illusions shaped by culture, geography, and faith. In Muslim countries, perhaps it's an image of the Mahdi. In Christian nations, Christ. In others, maybe alien ships descending from the sky. These visuals will be backed by subtle audio frequencies, so people hear voices inside their heads, as if divinity is speaking directly to them. Each message custom-tailored to convince, to convert, to overwhelm. The goal? Break down individual belief systems and consolidate them under one manufactured truth. Step 3 is what they call telepathic communication. Using ELF, extremely low frequency, waves, and neural manipulation, governments will simulate a form of global telepathy, thoughts that don't feel like your own, dreams that guide behavior, emotional shifts without warning. It won't feel forced. It'll feel like your own mind is just changing, and you won't know why. Step 4, a fake alien invasion. This is the big one. The United Nations, NATO, or some global coalition will declare Earth under attack. Holograms of alien ships will fill the skies. Cities might be destroyed, either with actual explosives or simulated chaos. The fear will be real, and in that fear, people will surrender their borders, their freedoms, their identities, all in exchange for security, for unity, for salvation. Once everyone's scared, disoriented, and desperate, the final piece drops, the arrival of the new Messiah, a being projected into the sky or emerging in person, part AI, part clone, part myth. This Messiah offers peace, a solution to global crises, a new order. But the price is everything. Total surveillance, brain chips, social credit systems, uniformity, compliance, peace through submission, all orchestrated, all planned, all perfectly timed. Critics say Project Bluebeam is fantasy, a paranoid delusion. But look at what's already happening. We've normalized deepfakes. People can make anyone say anything with a few clicks. Holograms have been used in concerts, political events, even protests. Neural manipulation? Elon Musk's Neuralink is already implanting chips. AI reads faces, predicts emotions, manipulates algorithms to guide behavior. And satellites? Thousands are already in orbit. Starlink, OneWeb, military constellations. They can see you, track you, talk to you. The stage is set, the tools exist. All it takes is intent and a spark. Think about how easy it would be to fracture trust today. All it takes is one world-shaking miracle or threat to unify people under a lie, a well-placed illusion, a synthetic savior, a fear big enough to make you forget everything else. Is Project Bluebeam real? That depends on what you believe. But ask yourself this: if they could fake an alien invasion, would they? If they could fabricate a second coming to control 7 billion minds, would anyone stop them? As you close your eyes tonight, imagine looking up at the stars and seeing something arrive, something divine, something extraterrestrial. Would you question it, or would you obey? Mandela effect. There's a moment, maybe it's happened to you, when you're absolutely certain something was a particular way. A name, a quote, a logo, a memory that feels locked in. But then you check, you dig it up, you compare it, and it's wrong. It's not just slightly off, it's like reality changed when you weren't looking. That feeling, that dissonance, that's the Mandela effect. Named after Nelson Mandela because thousands of people, independent, unrelated from around the world, swear he died in prison in the 1980s. They remember the news coverage, the speeches. But in this reality, he didn't die in the 80s. He became president of South Africa in the 90s. He died in 2013. Officially, but for so many, that's not what they remember. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. What color is chartreuse? Most would say pink, but it's green. Spell Berenstain Bears. Is it Stein or Stain? What about the Monopoly Man? Does he have a monocle? You probably think he does. He doesn't. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Not in the original Snow White. It's magic mirror. Even the classic Luke, I am your father. That's not the line. It's no, I am your father. And yet so many of us remember it differently. So many of us agree on the false version, down to exact words and pronunciation. What's happening here? Is it mass misremembering? A glitch in memory? Or are we slipping between realities, shifting across timelines where things are just slightly off? Here's one theory. The universe isn't a single unbroken stream. It's layered. Multiverses stacked on top of each other like pages in a book. And sometimes, through trauma, dreams, emotional spikes, or even collective consciousness, we slip. Not far. Just enough to land in a world that's 99. A fruit is spelled weird. A country's borders are off. People feel it deep in their bones, but there's no proof, no way to check. Because the internet, the books, the media, they all agree on the new version. You're left questioning your memory, your mind, your reality. But what if you're not wrong? What if we've been jumping realities our entire lives and only just started noticing? Quantum physics supports this idea more than you'd think. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every decision spawns alternate realities. Every possibility exists somewhere. So in one world, Mandela died in prison. In another, he didn't. In one world, the Monopoly Man has a monocle. In another, he doesn't. And maybe you just woke up in the wrong one, or the right one, or a new one. Some believe CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, might be the cause. In 2012, they fired up the Large Hadron Collider to record breaking energy levels. That same year, the Mandela effect exploded online. Coincidence? Maybe. But if you believe smashing particles at near light speed can bend spacetime, then reality warping doesn't seem so far-fetched. Others believe it's a psychological phenomenon, false memories, confabulation, suggestibility, and that makes sense, right? Except for one thing. Why do we all misremember the same things? Why are so many errors consistent across people who've never met, who live on different continents, who speak different languages. The Berenstain problem isn't random. It's oddly specific, and it's everywhere. Entire online communities have formed around the Mandela effect, sharing experiences, compiling evidence, cross-checking old media. People record videos flipping through books they swear used to read differently, and every so often, someone finds a relic, an old VHS, a label, a toy that doesn't match today's version. Proof, maybe, that something changed, or slipped, or bled through. There are whispers that this is just the beginning, that more and more anomalies will surface, that the Mandela effect is a symptom of a deeper shift, reality becoming unstable, fractured, recoded, that our memories are the last fragile evidence of the world we left behind. So as you drift off tonight, think about that moment, that flash of certainty that something used to be different. Maybe it was. Maybe the version of Earth you remember was overwritten. And maybe somewhere out there, someone is remembering you differently too. HAARP, hidden in the icy reaches of Alaska, sits a facility that looks like a giant antenna farm, rows upon rows of metal towers connected by thick cables pointing toward the sky. It's called HAARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, and on the surface, it's just a research station, built to study the ionosphere, the upper layer of Earth's atmosphere. But for decades, HAARP has been the target of intense suspicion. Why? Because what it actually does, how much power it uses, and the things it might be capable of don't line up with the official story. Here's the thing. HAARP is real. It's not a myth. It exists. It's operated by the U.S. military and other research agencies, and it's powerful. It can pump high-frequency radio waves into the atmosphere with pinpoint accuracy. These waves can heat sections of the ionosphere, triggering artificial auroras and manipulating electromagnetic properties. The stated purpose is to better understand radio wave propagation, improve communication systems, and study space weather. But the conspiracy is this: HAARP isn't just observing the atmosphere, it's changing it. People believe HAARP is a weapon, that it can control weather, cause earthquakes, manipulate minds, and when you dig into what it's capable of, that doesn't sound as ridiculous as it first seems. Start with weather. By heating specific layers of the atmosphere, HAARP could, in theory, alter pressure systems, steer jet streams, or even create storms. Sounds impossible, right? But think about it. The atmosphere is a delicate, interconnected system. A small shift in temperature or pressure in one region can cascade into a cyclone or drought halfway across the world. If you could direct that with precision, you'd hold the keys to environmental warfare. Imagine controlling a nation's crops by triggering a heat wave, or flooding enemy territory with weeks of artificial rain. Think back to bizarre weather events in recent decades: record-breaking hurricanes, flash droughts, unseasonal snow. Could some of them have been experiments? Could natural disasters be unnatural? Then there's seismic activity. The Earth's crust is sensitive to pressure and resonance. A sudden burst of energy at just the right frequency could, according to some physicists, act like a trigger, releasing tension in a fault line. Translation? The 2010 Haiti quake, some say it followed strange HAARP activity. The 2004 tsunami, satellites showed unusual atmospheric disturbances just before impact. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing lines up just enough to raise eyebrows. And it doesn't stop there. HAARP's ability to emit ELF, extremely low-frequency waves, has led to another layer of theory: mind control. The human brain responds to electromagnetic frequencies. That's not speculation, it's neuroscience. Mood, perception, alertness, they're all tied to electrical signals in the brain. What if those could be influenced remotely? If HAARP can broadcast certain frequencies over large areas, it could, in theory, alter behavior, make populations more compliant. Anxious, docile, angry. You wouldn't need implants or chips, just a fine-tuned signal and the right atmospheric conditions. Some researchers have pointed out strange mood shifts, increased violence, or mass confusion in areas near HAARP-like facilities across the world. Are we just looking for patterns, or is something being tested? Here's another twist. HAARP isn't the only one. Similar ionospheric research stations exist in Norway, Russia, Puerto Rico, and elsewhere. It's not just one country experimenting, it's multiple, quietly, without oversight. And every few years, new patents surface, technologies that use electromagnetic fields to influence weather, disrupt electronics, or manipulate biological functions. The blueprints are out there. It's just a matter of funding and scale, And HARP, it has both. So why the secrecy? Why the military involvement in what's supposedly pure science? Why are some of HARP's data logs classified? Why do flights avoid its airspace? Why have whistleblowers, some of them former employees, claim the facility does things the public isn't allowed to know? Some even believe HARP is a cover for deeper programs, things like frequency-based reality manipulation, dimensional interference, or consciousness research. That's the far edge of the theory, but let's be real, if a government could control weather, disasters, and public emotion, that's the ultimate weapon. No missiles, no blood, just outcomes. So as you lie in bed tonight listening to the wind, the static, the hum in the walls, ask yourself this: what if the storm outside your window isn't natural? What if the lightning, the fog, the oppressive mood is engineered? And what if we're just starting to hear the first notes of a frequency designed to rewrite reality itself? Bohemian Grove, tucked away in the redwood forests of Northern California, down a private road marked with no trespassing signs and hidden cameras, lies Bohemian Grove, a sprawling 2,000. Every summer, some of the most powerful men on Earth slip away from public view and gather here, far from cameras, microphones, or press. We're talking U.S. presidents, Fortune 500 CEOs, media moguls, heads of state, military generals, Silicon Valley elites. They come dressed in robes. They chant around firelight. They perform rituals beneath a giant stone owl. This isn't conspiracy theory, it's documented. It's real. And the question is, what exactly are they doing in those woods? The official explanation? Bohemian Grove is just a retreat, a place for relaxation. No business, no deals, just wealthy, powerful men letting off steam in private. They drink, they sing, they stage plays, and they participate in a theatrical ceremony called the cremation of care. In this ritual, robed men carry an effigy, called dull care, and burn it in front of a 40-foot stone owl while chanting in mock Latin. It's meant to symbolize the shedding of worldly stress before 2 weeks of leisure. Sounds harmless, silly even, but here's where it turns. Why would leaders of nations and industries, people who influence trillions of dollars and millions of lives, participate in something so odd, so theatrical, so pagan in appearance? Why the secrecy? Why the massive security perimeter, the airspace restrictions, the armed guards? Why ban cameras and journalists if it's just a harmless party? In 2000, journalist Alex Jones famously snuck into Bohemian Grove with a hidden camera. He filmed the cremation of care ceremony. It wasn't just campy, it was unsettling. Hooded figures, firelight, chants, the eerie voice of the high priest declaring that dull care is banished for another year. The footage sparked massive interest and controversy, especially because until then, most people thought Bohemian Grove was just a myth. The owl, the central symbol of the grove, adds another layer. It's not just a random statue. The owl has long been a symbol of Minerva, the Roman goddess of wisdom. But in esoteric traditions, the owl represents more than wisdom. It represents hidden knowledge, elite surveillance, and the idea of seeing in the dark. Some even link it to Moloch, a Canaanite deity historically associated with child sacrifice. Is that leap too far? Maybe, but it raises an unsettling question. Why does a group of the most powerful people on the planet choose to burn an effigy in front of a 40-foot owl? Of all symbols, why that? Then there's the guest list. Richard Nixon called it the most faggy goddamn thing you could ever imagine, and admitted attending. Ronald Reagan and Gerald Ford were regulars. George H.W. Bush, Henry Kissinger, Colin Powell, all attendees. Even tech moguls and entertainment giants have been spotted. These aren't fringe people. These are the ones running the world, and they're spending a week out of every year behind closed gates, engaging in strange rituals and private talks. Is it really just leisure? There are stories, whispers, about what really happens there. That business deals are discussed, political alliances formed, that some of the biggest policies affecting war, finance, and technology are decided not in parliaments or boardrooms, but in redwood groves over whiskey and cigars. That decisions about candidates, wars, and legislation are planted and watered in Bohemian soil. One of the most persistent rumors is that the Manhattan Project, the development of the atomic bomb, was first conceived at Bohemian Grove. In a casual fireside chat, that alone should tell you something about what this place means. Some believe Bohemian Grove is a modern-day version of ancient mystery schools where elites are initiated into deeper truths, deeper allegiances, and deeper power. The rituals, the secrecy, the symbols, it all fits. Others say it's a grooming ground for future leaders, that if you're invited and you accept, you're agreeing to play the game, to be part of the club, to follow the unspoken rules. What happens in the grove stays in the grove, but what comes out of it, that affects all of us. Whether you see Bohemian Grove as a harmless frat party for the elite or a ritualistic power nexus that shapes global events behind closed doors, one thing is certain: it's real, it's active, and it's private by design. The people who gather there don't want to be seen. They don't want to be heard. And maybe, just maybe, they're not playing dress up. Maybe they're reminding themselves and each other of the real power they hold, not just over economies and armies, but over perception, belief, and the stories we tell ourselves about how the world works. So tonight, as you lie in bed, imagine those tall redwoods stretching up into the California sky, a fire burning, robes rustling, voices chanting, and somewhere in that deep, dark silence, the most powerful men in the world raising a glass, not to democracy, not to justice, but to themselves. Denver Airport. At first glance, Denver International Airport, DIA, is just an airport, big, busy, a little out of the way. But spend 5 minutes looking past the terminals and gates, and you'll see why it's one of the most talked about conspiracy hotbeds in the world. DIA isn't just an airport, it's a riddle, wrapped in concrete, surrounded by barbed wire, covered in symbols, and guarded by a blue horse with glowing red eyes. No, really. The statue's official name is Blue Mustang, but most people call it Blucifer. It's 32 feet tall, with veins bulging across its muscular body and eyes that shine like fire. It even killed its creator, Luis Jimenez, when a section of the sculpture fell and crushed him. That alone is enough to raise eyebrows, but it's just the beginning. The airport is filled with bizarre art, murals of gas mask-wearing soldiers with swords and machine guns, children in coffins, cities on fire, doves impaled by rifles. Then the next mural shows smiling kids from around the world holding a piece of the same sword, like peace through conquest. These aren't tucked away in some obscure gallery. They were in the main terminals, greeting millions of travelers. Who commissioned that? Who thought it was appropriate for an airport? And what message were they sending? Look around DIA, and you'll see references to the New World Order. There's a capstone labeled with the Freemason symbol and a reference to a New World Airport Commission, which doesn't seem to exist. You can Google it. Nothing. The Masonic symbol isn't just decoration. It's carved in stone, dated March 19, 1994, with names of mysterious figures attached. And beneath that stone, rumor has it there's a time capsule filled with secrets to be opened in 2094. Then there's the layout. From above, some say the runways form the shape of a swastika, not a perfect one, but close enough that people notice. And while that may be coincidence, it adds fuel to theories that the airport is more than just a transportation hub. Many believe DIA sits atop massive underground bunkers, possibly military, possibly something else. Construction went wildly over budget, over $2 billion more than planned, and no one can quite explain why. Different contractors were hired to work on isolated sections, then let go without knowing what the full plans were. That's a classic compartmentalization tactic in black ops projects. Some workers have claimed they saw massive tunnels being dug out, far larger than needed for luggage or trains. There are areas of the airport restricted to even high-level staff. Some say it's a shelter for the global elite in case of catastrophe, a modern-day Noah's Ark, but underground. A few even suggest it's a base for aliens or a shadow government. Wild? Maybe. But when you start seeing this much symbolism and secrecy in one place, it starts to feel curated. The airport's own marketing team has leaned into the rumors. They've posted signs during renovations that joke about underground lizard people and Illuminati headquarters, trying to spin the whole thing as a running gag. But is that transparency or misdirection? Because the more they joke, the more they control the narrative. The art, the architecture, the mystery, it becomes a tourist attraction. Meanwhile, the deeper questions never get answered. And the deeper you dig, the weirder it gets. There are whispered connections between DIA and NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, located deep inside a mountain nearby. Allegedly, a secret tunnel links the two. There are ties to the CIA, to continuity of government programs, to Cold War-era shelter systems. The kind of things you only need if you're planning for a future you don't want to talk about. Even the fences around the property are strange. Some are barbed outward, not inward, suggesting they're built to keep people in, not out. And the airport's location? Far from the city, in the middle of flat land. Ideal for air traffic, sure, but also ideal for something hidden beneath. So what's really going on at Denver International Airport? Is it a psychological experiment? A hide-in-plain-sight Illuminati base? A global reset shelter? Or just a very weird airport that enjoys messing with us? Whatever it is, it's working. People keep asking. Theories keep growing, and the deeper you go, the less sense anything makes. And maybe that's the point. Confuse the facts, saturate with symbols, joke about the truth, until nobody knows what to believe anymore. As you drift off, picture the stone owl from Bohemian Grove watching from above. Now picture Lucifer, its eyes glowing in the dark, guarding a gateway not to flights and terminals, but to something much deeper. MK Ultra. This isn't just a theory, it's documented, declassified, and real. Not the title of a sci-fi novel, not a Reddit myth. It actually happened, and the more you look into it, the darker it gets. The program officially began in the early 1950s, led by the CIA's Technical Services Division, with the goal of developing methods for controlling the human mind. The agency wanted tools to break people, reprogram them, erase memories, and implant new ones. The Cold War was the perfect excuse. Fear of Soviet brainwashing and communist psychological warfare drove the U.S. to match fire with fire. But what they ended up doing was something far worse. MK Ultra tested on civilians, soldiers, students, prisoners, and even other CIA agents, often without their knowledge or consent. Subjects were drugged, hypnotized, isolated, and psychologically tortured. LSD was their favorite tool. They thought psychedelics could strip the mind down to its most vulnerable state, opening it up to suggestion. They administered it to people without warning. Imagine going into a hospital for a headache and waking up mid-hallucination, unable to trust your senses. They slipped LSD into drinks at parties, into the water supply. They watched how people lost themselves, hoping to find a crack in the human psyche where influence could be planted. One experiment, dubbed Operation Midnight Climax, set up CIA-controlled brothels in San Francisco and New York. Men were lured in, drugged, and observed through one-way mirrors. The CIA wanted to study how drugs, sex, and manipulation could be used to extract information or control behavior. It sounds like the plot of a psychological horror film, but it's all in the records. Then came sensory deprivation tanks, people locked in silent, pitch-black rooms for days, floating in water, cut off from sound, sight, and time. The point? To erase the mind's grasp on reality, to break it down so new beliefs could be introduced. Some subjects went catatonic, some became paranoid for life. Others died. One of the most tragic stories tied to MK Ultra is that of Frank Olson, a U.S. Army scientist who was secretly dosed with LSD by his CIA colleagues. He experienced a mental breakdown and died shortly after, falling from a hotel window in New York. Officially ruled a suicide, but decades later, his family uncovered evidence suggesting he may have been murdered because he knew too much and was planning to talk. By the 1970s, Congress started asking questions. A special commission led by Senator Frank Church exposed parts of MK Ultra to the public. But by then, most of the documents had been destroyed, literally shredded. The CIA claimed the program had ended, but how can you be sure when the people running it erased their own paper trail? And here's where the conspiracy really picks up. Some believe MK Ultra never ended, it just evolved, that its techniques live on in advertising, propaganda, influencer culture, social media algorithms. Think about it. If you can control attention, you control belief. If you can implant ideas subtly enough, people think they came up with them on their own. Modern tech makes that easier than ever. Personalized feeds, dopamine hits, repetition, isolation through overstimulation, all tools for shaping behavior. Voluntarily now, no drugs required. Others believe celebrities and public figures are part of MK Ultra's legacy. The phrase MK'd shows up a lot online, used to describe stars who glitch on camera, repeat strange phrases, or seem to have multiple personalities. It could be mental illness, or it could be trauma-based programming. Monarch mind control is one subset, based on the idea that intense trauma fractures the mind, and handlers can then program new identities into the fragments. That sounds extreme, but MK Ultra literally experimented with similar techniques. There's also the idea of sleeper agents, people unknowingly programmed to perform tasks under certain triggers. A word, a sound, a phrase could activate a completely different personality. The Manchurian Candidate wasn't fiction, it was modeled on real CIA interests. Some believe events throughout history, from assassinations to mass shootings, could have involved MK Ultra victims. People activated, used, discarded. The scary part, you'll never know who it happened to, or if it's still happening. That's the genius of psychological control. You don't need chains or cages, you just need enough access to the mind. Enough time to plant the seed, and enough technology to make sure it grows. So tonight, as you fall asleep, ask yourself, how many of your thoughts are really yours? And how would you know if someone else had already slipped something inside your mind? Moon landing hoax. On July 20th, that's the official story. But ever since that moment, a large and loud group of people have insisted it was all fake. A show. A Cold War bluff designed to beat the Soviets to the punch and plant an American flag on a soundstage. Welcome to the moon landing hoax theory. It's one of the most famous conspiracies on Earth, and it starts with a single question. Why haven't we gone back? Between 1969 and after that, nothing. Not one human has been past low Earth orbit since. The argument goes like this. Why would we develop such an incredible technology, pull off the most daring feat in human history, and then stop? Why can't we do it now with better tech, bigger budgets, and more motivation? But let's look at the evidence that fuels the theory. Start with the photos. In multiple lunar images, shadows fall in different directions, which suggests multiple light sources. That doesn't happen in natural sunlight. Then there's the famous flag. Why is it waving if there's no wind on the moon? NASA says it's just inertia from planting it, and the flag had a metal rod at the top to keep it horizontal. But to critics, it looks staged. There are also claims that the crosshairs etched onto the camera lens appear behind objects in some photos, meaning images may have been altered. And then there's the radiation problem. To get to the moon, astronauts had to pass through the Van Allen radiation belts, zones of intense solar radiation that would, theoretically, be lethal without heavy shielding. The Apollo spacecrafts didn't have that kind of protection. So how did they survive? NASA says their trajectory and speed minimized exposure, but skeptics argue it's a dangerous oversight. One of the biggest arguments is the technology itself. The computing power on Apollo missions was laughably primitive by today's standards. Your phone is thousands of times more powerful. And yet, in 1969, they navigated, landed, and returned safely with fewer calculations than a digital watch. Even stranger, NASA has admitted it lost the original footage of the moon landing and most of the telemetry data from the missions. Imagine losing the blueprints to the most important achievement in human history. That's not just strange, it's suspicious. Then there's Stanley Kubrick. Some believe the legendary filmmaker was hired to fake the moon landing footage. After all, he just made 2001 A Space Odyssey, which had groundbreaking visual effects. Some claim the Apollo footage shares uncanny similarities with Kubrick's cinematic style. There's even a theory that his film The Shining contains cryptic confessions, like Danny's Apollo 11 sweater and the haunted room 237, possibly referencing the moon's average distance from Earth, 237,000 miles. But why would NASA fake it? In 1969, the Cold War was peaking. The U.S. was desperate to beat the USSR in the space race. Billions of dollars had already been poured into NASA. America needed a win, and a moon landing would prove not just technological superiority, but ideological dominance. If they couldn't actually do it, faking it might have seemed like the only option. There's also the possibility that the moon landings happened, but what we saw was faked. Maybe the footage was staged for public consumption in case the real mission failed or didn't produce usable visuals. It's cleaner, controlled, easier to broadcast. NASA gets the win. The world gets the show. Others take it further. They believe there are things on the moon NASA didn't want us to see. Structures, signals, evidence of non-human activity. And so, the footage we saw wasn't just faked, it was filtered. Still, the majority of scientists, engineers, and astronauts stand by the moon landings as real. Thousands of people worked on Apollo, but conspiracy theorists remain unconvinced. They point out inconsistencies, missing data, contradictory interviews. To them, The moon landing isn't just a question of fact, it's a symbol of how easy it is to believe what you're shown, of how hard it is to question something sacred, of how fragile truth becomes when history is written by those in power. So tonight, as you stare at the moon out your window, ask yourself, are you looking at the site of mankind's greatest leap or the greatest lie ever told? The Great Reset. The phrase sounds harmless enough, a fresh start, a chance to rethink society, economy, and governance in the wake of global crisis. But to many, the Great Reset isn't about progress, it's about control. It's not a plan to build back better. It's a blueprint for a new kind of power structure where democracy is diluted, ownership is optional, and the elite hold the steering wheel while everyone else gets a seatbelt and a screen. It all starts with the World Economic Forum, an annual meeting in Davos where billionaires, world leaders, tech giants, and heads of state gather to discuss the future. In 2020, Klaus Schwab, founder of the WF, announced the Great Reset. The idea was framed as a response to COVID-19, climate change, and rising inequality. The solution? A total redesign of the global economy. Public-private partnerships, environmental, social, and governance standards, digitized services, a move toward a stakeholder capitalism that prioritizes social good alongside profit. On paper, it sounds reasonable. But here's the thing, none of us voted for it. No one asked for this, and yet the people promoting it are some of the least accountable in the world. They're not elected, they're not transparent, but they have immense influence over governments, tech platforms, and financial systems. When Schwab said, "You'll own nothing and you'll be happy," people took notice. Was that a prediction or a plan? It's a cornerstone of the reset vision, a future where homes, cars, devices, even clothes are rented or shared via subscription. It's framed as convenience, no responsibility, no clutter, just access. But what it really means is dependency. If you don't own anything, someone else does. And if you're renting your life, the landlord has power over everything. Then there's the push for a digital currency system. Central bank digital currencies are being explored across the world. Unlike Bitcoin, CBDCs are fully controlled by the government. Every transaction can be tracked. Every account can be frozen. Combine that with a social credit system, a concept already being tested in parts of China, and you have the ingredients for a future where your access to money, travel, or even food is tied to your behavior. Obey, and you get convenience. Dissent, and the lights go out. The Great Reset also ties into surveillance. Under the guise of health and safety, we saw unprecedented tracking during the pandemic, vaccine passports, contact tracing, digital check-ins. Those tools were called temporary, but they laid the foundation for a much more permanent system, one where biometric ID, behavior analysis, and predictive policing become normalized. And behind it all, you find the same faces. Mega corporations that benefit from crisis, banks that get bigger as small businesses collapse, tech platforms that censor dissent in the name of safety. Every year, these groups gather in Davos, sip champagne, and map out your future without you in the room. So is the Great Reset a conspiracy? Not exactly. It's not hidden. It's published on their website, in their books, in press releases. But the danger isn't in what they say, it's in what they mean. When unelected elites talk about reimagining the world, they don't mean empowering citizens. They mean optimizing the system for efficiency, compliance, and control. The real reset isn't coming from above. It's already here, slowly shifting the way we live, think, and own. One subscription at a time, one surveillance upgrade at a time, one new normal at a time. So as you fall asleep, think about what you own, your choices, your privacy, your power, and then ask, what if they're being reset while you rest? Tartaria. There was once a great empire, sprawling, advanced, erased, not by time, but by design. That's the story of Tartaria, a civilization that supposedly stretched across much of Asia, Eastern Europe, and possibly even parts of North America. You won't find it in history books, you won't hear about it in class, but dig deep into ancient maps, architectural anomalies, and lost records, and a picture starts to form. One that suggests we've been lied to, that the history we know isn't just incomplete, it's been rewritten. The theory starts with old maps. 17th and 18th century European atlases often label a massive region across northern Asia as Tartary or Grand Tartaria. This was no vague tribal region, it was marked as a kingdom, with borders, cities, even trade routes. Historians will tell you Tartary was just a term Europeans used for unknown or loosely controlled territories. But if that's true, why is it labeled with such consistency and specificity? And why did it suddenly vanish from maps by the 19th century? Then there's the architecture. Across Russia, Central Asia, even in parts of the US, you'll find massive buildings, impossibly ornate, made of stone, with domes, columns, and intricate carvings. These aren't colonial, they're not medieval, and in many cases they don't fit the timeline of local development. How did frontier towns in the American West suddenly have elaborate courthouses and opera houses in the 80s? Who built these structures, and where did that knowledge come from? The Tartaria theory suggests a lost civilization, one with advanced technology, possibly free energy, using architectural designs aligned with sacred geometry and natural frequencies. Proponents point to star forts, geometrically precise military-style forts found all over the world with similar designs regardless of location or culture. How did civilizations separated by oceans and centuries create the same patterns? Coincidence or shared knowledge? Some claim that the destruction of Tartaria wasn't gradual, it was catastrophic, a global reset. Mudfloods are a common theme, massive, planet-wide deluges that buried buildings in soil and debris. There's photographic evidence of 19th century buildings with ground-level windows below the dirt line, doors half buried, or entire lower floors discovered during excavation. Historians say this is due to changing street levels or urban development. But what if it's not? What if we're digging up the ruins of a civilization that was deliberately buried? The theory gets deeper. According to Tartaria believers, the world's current power structures rose from the ashes of this lost empire. The Industrial Revolution wasn't innovation, it was rediscovery. The events like the World's Fairs and expositions were allegedly used to showcase and then dismantle Tartarian structures under the guise of temporary displays. Entire buildings were erected, photographed, admired, and then destroyed. Why would you spend millions building massive palaces and halls only to tear them down a few years later? Unless they weren't built then, unless they were remnants of something older. Language plays a role too. Tartary, Tartarus, words linked to chaos, mystery, even the underworld in some traditions. The rewriting of names and maps wasn't just about geography, it was about narrative. If you erase a people's name, you erase their story. Mainstream historians dismiss Tartaria as myth. They say it's pseudoscience, fueled by internet echo chambers and misinterpretations. But the intensity of the pushback only fuels the theory. Why are people who question architectural timelines, historical photos, or anomalous maps mocked so aggressively? If there's nothing to hide, why the effort to ridicule? And here's where it gets eerie. If Tartaria was real, if it was wiped from the record, then we're not living in the world we think we are. Our modern societies didn't emerge from the ashes of Rome or the Enlightenment. They rose from a reset, a suppression, a silencing of something that might have offered a different path, a world powered by sound, frequency, and harmony instead of wires, banks, and war. So as you fall asleep tonight, picture a skyline that once stood tall, domes, arches, towers resonating with energy, a civilization not lost to time, but buried under it, and then ask, if Tartaria did exist, what else don't we know? Antarctica secrets. There's a whole continent at the bottom of the world that almost no one talks about. No cities, no highways, no native populations. Just ice, miles of it. Yet beneath that silence, Antarctica holds some of the most unsettling mysteries on Earth. The weird part? Most of them aren't hidden, they're simply ignored. And the more you start looking at the strange history, restricted access, and bizarre findings buried in those frozen layers, the more it starts to feel like someone doesn't want you asking questions. Start with this. Antarctica is governed by the Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 by dozens of the world's most powerful nations. It bans military activity, mining, and permanent settlements. On the surface, it sounds like a noble effort to preserve a pristine environment. But think about it. During the Cold War, when countries couldn't agree on anything, they all agreed to leave Antarctica alone. No weapons, no territorial claims, no fighting. Why? Some say it's because there's something down there they already discovered and agreed to keep quiet about. Now let's rewind to the 1930s. Nazi Germany sent multiple expeditions to Antarctica. They even claimed a section of it, calling it Neuschwabenland. Reports suggest they were interested in underground cave systems, warm water lakes, and massive subterranean chambers. After World War II, whispers emerged that high-ranking Nazis escaped to Antarctica and continued secret research there. That might sound like a stretch until you hear about Operation High Jump. In 1946, just a year after World War II, called Operation High Jump, it included 4,700 men, 13 ships, and aircraft carriers. Officially, it was for training and research. Unofficially, it looked like a full-blown invasion. The operation ended abruptly, and rumors began that the U.S. encountered something unexpected, possibly even hostile. Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, who led the mission, later told reporters that the U.S. might face enemies capable of flying from pole to pole at incredible speeds. What exactly did he see? Then there's the mystery of Lake Vostok. Buried beneath 2 miles of ice, this massive subglacial lake has been sealed off from the surface for millions of years. When Russian scientists drilled into it, they stopped just short of penetrating the water. Why? Some say they were warned. Others believe what's in that lake isn't just microbial life, it's ancient, possibly alien, possibly something that rewrites everything we know about Earth's history. Satellite images of Antarctica have shown unusual structures, geometric shapes, what look like entrances to underground complexes, even what appear to be pyramids. Geologists say these are natural formations, but critics point out their sharp angles, perfect symmetry, and unnatural patterns. If these were spotted in Egypt or Central America, we'd call them ruins. So why not here? And then there's the magnetic anomaly near Lake Vostok. It's one of the strongest magnetic readings on the planet. Something buried under the ice is giving off a powerful signal, something dense, metallic, and massive. Some think it's a crashed UFO. Others think it's a buried structure from a pre-Ice Age civilization. Whatever it is, it's not random. And it's drawing attention. Access to Antarctica is strictly controlled. Tourists are allowed only in small groups in guided zones. No one goes off-trail. Independent research is nearly impossible without government approval, and air travel across the continent is restricted. Why? If there's nothing there, why the secrecy? Why the surveillance? Then you start hearing about people who tried to speak out, scientists who hinted at strange finds and suddenly changed their stories, journalists who tried to dig deeper and hit walls. And here's where it gets even more chilling. Some researchers believe Antarctica was once home to an ancient, technologically advanced civilization. Long before recorded history, long before the ice. Maybe they were human, maybe not. Some connect this theory to the idea of Atlantis, not a myth, but a memory of a lost civilization that once spanned the Earth, its remnants buried under oceans, deserts, and yes, ice. If Antarctica was once warm, as some studies suggest, it could have supported life, even cities, even megastructures. And if those structures are still down there, buried beneath miles of ice, they're perfectly preserved, waiting. In 2016, Secretary of State John Kerry made a sudden and unexplained trip to Antarctica during an election year. While much of the world was focused on politics, Kerry was inspecting frozen tundra. Why? Some say it was to visit a newly uncovered site, a chamber, a vault, maybe something older than civilization itself. And it's not just Kerry. Other global figures, including Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill and high-level Vatican officials, have quietly made visits to Antarctica over the past decade. These aren't casual trips. These are the kinds of visits you make when something big has been discovered, something that demands the attention of power. So what's really buried under the ice? An alien base? An ancient city? A lost history of the world that would shatter religion, science, and geopolitics in a single breath? Or is it just frozen water and rocks, and all the secrecy is just bureaucracy? Here's the thing. The answers might not matter. What matters is that for a place with no cities, no culture, and no war, there's a lot of interest in Antarctica, a lot of protection, a lot of mystery, and wherever there's mystery, there's power. Someone knows what's down there, and they're not telling. As you drift off to sleep, picture a continent the size of the US and Mexico combined, sitting in silence at the bottom of the Earth, covered in a sheet of ice 2 miles thick, hiding something, waiting, the Mandela effect. You remember something clearly, a name, a logo, a line from a movie. It's burned into your brain, but then you look it up and it's wrong. Not just off by a little, but completely different. You're not alone. Thousands, even millions, of people remember it the same way you do. But according to history, the records, the internet, and everyone in charge, your memory is false. That's the Mandela effect. At first glance, it sounds like mass confusion or poor recall, but when enough people remember the same incorrect detail with the same intensity and confidence, it stops looking like a mistake and starts looking like something else, something bigger. The term Mandela effect came from a woman named Fiona Broome, who realized she and many others vividly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in a South African prison in the 1980s. His funeral, news coverage, tributes, all of it. But in this timeline, Mandela lived until 2013, and it wasn't just one or two people, it was a lot. They had detailed memories, emotional reactions, and full mental narratives of something that, supposedly, never happened. That's when things got weird. People started noticing other misremembrances, like the Berenstain Bears. You probably remember the children's book series as Berenstain with an E, but it's Berenstain with an A. Always has been, according to every book, copyright, and author interview. Then there's the Monopoly Man. Does he wear a monocle? You're picturing him right now with one, aren't you? But officially, he never had one. People confuse him with Mr. Peanut, they say. Sure. Then comes the movie lines. Luke, I am your father never happened. Darth Vader says, no, I am your father. These aren't just typos or fuzzy details. They're things people swore by, quoted for years, passed down, and referenced. But now they're different. The Mandela effect goes further. People remember entire countries being in different places. Brand logos changing in ways that feel off. Kit Kat never had a hyphen. Fruit of the Loom never had a cornucopia behind the fruit. Pikachu never had a black-tipped tail. C-3PO has one silver leg, and no one seems to agree on how many U.S. states there are. Some swear it was 51 or 52. So what's going on? The simplest explanation is bad memory. Human recall is flawed, and we fill in gaps with assumptions. We remember what feels right, not what is right. But that doesn't explain the consistency. People from all over the world, with no connection to each other, report the same false memories, at the same time, in the same way. Another theory is that we're slipping between parallel realities, that each memory is from a slightly different universe, one with its own subtle rules and history. You remember Berenstain because you came from that timeline, but you live in one where it's Berenstain. That's why the details don't line up. It's not just your brain, it's your reality. Some suggest these shifts happen when timelines collide or are altered, maybe through large-scale experiments like CERN's Large Hadron Collider. Maybe something went wrong when we started smashing atoms. Maybe reality itself isn't fixed, it's a probability cloud, and each memory is a glimpse into another version of it. Then there's the simulation theory. What if we're living in a kind of computer program, a vast simulation designed to mimic reality? The Mandela effect could be glitches in the code, artifacts of reprogramming. When the system updates, old references disappear, logos change, quotes rewrite. The problem is, our consciousness remembers the old version, but the world shows us the new one. We feel that dissonance, that itch in the back of the mind, that sense that something's wrong. Some go further and say the Mandela effect is deliberate, that someone or something is testing how much they can change before we notice. Each memory glitch is a probe, a measurement. How far can you push the boundaries of belief before people snap? What's the tolerance level of the average human before they start to question reality itself? Others believe this is spiritual. That awakening souls are beginning to see through the illusions of this world. That memory isn't just stored in the brain, but in the soul, and the Mandela effect is a sign of souls waking up, remembering other lives, other timelines, and truths we were never meant to see. There's even a connection to quantum consciousness, the idea that observation affects reality and collective memory can shape the present. If enough people believe something happened, maybe it did in some version of reality. Maybe our memories are real, just not here, just not now. This goes beyond trivia. The Mandela effect forces us to question the very nature of reality, time, and truth. If history can change without notice, if memories can be shared yet wrong, what else might be unstable? How do we trust what we know? What if the past isn't fixed? What if it's fluid? What if reality is only real because we agree on it, and now that agreement is cracking? As you fall asleep tonight, think about the last time something felt off. A street that seemed different, A song lyric that changed? A feeling you couldn't explain? What if you didn't imagine it? What if you're remembering correctly? Phantom time hypothesis. Imagine waking up tomorrow and being told that everything you knew about history, every century, every empire, every date, is wrong by almost 300 years. That Charlemagne never existed, that the early Middle Ages never happened, that we're not living in 2025, but somewhere closer to the 1700s. That's the phantom time hypothesis, and as outrageous as it sounds, there's a reason it's kept conspiracy theorists, historians, and skeptics arguing for decades. It all starts with a German historian named Herbert Illig. In the 1990s, Illig proposed a wild theory that roughly 2097 years of recorded European history, specifically between AD 6114 and AD 9, a lack of reliable documentation, coincidences in dating, and three major players, Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, Pope Sylvester II, and Byzantine Emperor Constantine VII, may have conspired to fake this period of time for political and theological reasons. One of the motives? Otto III allegedly wanted to rule during the year 1000, a number loaded with apocalyptic and divine symbolism, so they simply added 297 years to the calendar to bring their reigns in line with the millennial date. With the help of church authorities and record keepers, they forged documents, altered artifacts, and created a historical narrative that made the fabricated years seem real. But let's rewind and look at the oddities that gave this theory traction. First, the architectural and technological development during the so-called Dark Ages is strangely stagnant. For almost 300 years, there's very little advancement. Then suddenly, around the 10th century, Europe seems to spring to life. Cathedrals, trade, politics, population. It's as if the lights turned on overnight. What if those 300 years never actually happened? What if there's no true evidence for the events said to occur in that gap, like the rule of Charlemagne, often described in larger-than-life terms, almost mythological? Illig and others argue that Charlemagne may have been a fictional composite figure, stitched together from fragments of different rulers and legends to create a noble ancestor for the Holy Roman Empire. Then there's the Julian and Gregorian calendar discrepancy. When Pope Gregory XIII introduced the Gregorian calendar in 1582 to correct inaccuracies in the Julian calendar, the shift was off by about 10 days. But if the Julian calendar had truly been in use since 45 BC, the drift should have been closer to 13 days. In Illig's view, the missing days point to missing time, around 2097 years worth. This discrepancy, though small, fuels the suspicion that time itself has been tampered with. But what about other civilizations? What about Chinese, Islamic, or Mesoamerican records that span the same period? Critics of phantom time say this is its biggest flaw, that the theory is too Eurocentric. Other cultures do have artifacts, astronomy, and writings that seem to align with the traditional timeline. However, proponents argue that our synchronization of different calendars, especially before globalization, is far less reliable than we think. Most cross-referencing was done much later, often based on European models. Another piece of fuel for the fire is the limited amount of reliable artifacts from this time period. Many supposed relics of the 7th and 9th centuries can't be precisely dated or rely on documents created centuries after the fact. Even key texts like the writings of early medieval monks were copied and recopied by later scribes, who may have inserted names or dates to support an invented timeline. Then there's the fact that timekeeping itself was poorly standardized. Until the 18th century, most people didn't keep precise track of dates. Calendars varied, literacy was rare, and historical knowledge was mostly oral, which means that changing a few dates at the top among church officials and monarchs could ripple down into centuries of historical confusion. It wouldn't require a massive global conspiracy, just a few people with the right access at the right time. The phantom time hypothesis doesn't suggest the world is younger than we think. It argues that we simply miscounted, that history has been manipulated, compressed, or fabricated to serve political and religious agendas, that there's no year zero problem. And here's the twist. Even if Illig's hypothesis is completely wrong, it forces us to ask bigger questions. How do we know what year it is? How do we verify the past? We rely on textbooks, calendars, and authority. But every one of those things was made by people, with opinions, motives, and power. Maybe there was no grand conspiracy, but maybe history is just a story we agreed on, and once something is written in stone, literally or figuratively, it becomes truth, until someone looks closer. So tonight, as you fall asleep, count backwards. 2025, 2024, 2023, all the way to 911. Then try to imagine everything between 6114 and 91 being erased. Not forgotten, not lost, just never there. What does that do to your sense of time, to your trust in history, and to your place in the world? Dead internet theory. There's a growing idea floating around corners of the web that seems crazy at first, until you stop and think about it. It's called the dead internet theory. The claim is simple, but disturbing. The internet, as you knew it, died years ago. And what you see now, the trends, the comments, the viral content, the engagement, isn't real. It's manufactured, simulated. Most of what you interact with online isn't coming from actual people, but from bots, algorithms, and AI posing as users. In other words, you're not on the internet with billions of humans anymore. You're in a simulation of social life, and you're one of the few real ones left. Let's walk through it. You scroll through Twitter, YouTube, Reddit, TikTok. Content everywhere, engagements, opinions, thousands of comments that somehow all sound the same, memes spreading like wildfire in hours, certain phrases you start seeing everywhere like they're being injected into culture. Ever noticed how fast slang moves? How often you see a post get upvoted or liked into viral status despite being average or worse, nonsensical? That's the first hint. According to believers of the dead internet theory, most of the internet is now automated. Corporations, governments, and black budget operations have flooded the web with synthetic activity to control narratives, test reactions, push products, and distract the public. The numbers support the suspicion. In 2022, cybersecurity firms estimated that more than 40% of all internet traffic came from bots. That's not just web crawlers. That includes spam bots, click farms, fake social media accounts, algorithmic interactions. Add in AI-generated content, and suddenly, the line between real and fake disappears. How do you know the person you're arguing with on Reddit is real, or that the Twitter thread that triggered a social movement wasn't built by code? You don't. You can't. And here's where it gets darker. The theory suggests that since around 2016, or maybe even earlier, there's been a shift, a quiet handover, that the organic, chaotic human internet that defined the 2000s was gradually overtaken. Bots became more convincing. Algorithms started predicting and steering conversations. AI content began filling the gaps. Forums went silent. Old websites shut down. Comments started sounding the same. Creativity flattened. Everything became curated, polished, empty, like you're in a theme park version of the internet. If you were online in the early 2000s, you probably remember it differently. It was weird, messy, personal. Blogs were chaotic. Videos were unedited. Forums had wild arguments that didn't follow brand guidelines. There were fewer people, but more personality. Now, everything's optimized, tailored, sanitized. The internet feels bigger, but also lonelier. That's the paradox. Billions of users, but genuine interaction feels rare. The dead internet theory says that's intentional. The idea is that governments and megacorporations wanted control over a space that had become too unpredictable, too free, so they flooded it with synthetic life. To push ideas, to sell products, to suppress dissent, to drown real voices in a sea of noise. The end result? You sense the same joke bouncing across 10 different platforms, posted by different people with identical cadence. That eerie feeling that you're talking to no one, that's the dead internet. It's the slow realization that most of your online life is interacting with shadows. AI makes it worse. Language models can now write essays, comments, reviews, scripts. Deepfakes can mimic faces, voices. Bots can respond in seconds with tailored messages. If you're building content, competing with this flood becomes impossible. And if you're consuming content, separating real from fake becomes exhausting. So most people stop trying. They just accept the stream. They scroll, react, move on. Passive. Controlled. But what if this isn't just market evolution? What if this is a control system? Imagine a world where the internet is mostly fake, and you're one of the few real users left. Your opinions are being shaped by fake conversations. Your searches are being steered by SEO algorithms that surface synthetic content. Your newsfeed is algorithmically designed to generate emotions, fear, anger, distraction, not to inform. And when something real does go viral, when someone breaks through the simulation, it gets buried, deleted, or drowned out by noise. If it sounds like paranoia, think about what social media companies have already admitted to: shadow banning, algorithmic suppression, platform bias. Now imagine those tools in the hands of governments, intelligence agencies, or private firms with agendas, not just to sell you products, but to shape how you think, what you believe, how you vote, what you fear, what you don't question. And if the majority of content is synthetic, that control becomes invisible. You don't need censorship when you can just overwhelm the truth with noise. If 99% of voices in a room are fake, the 1% real voice disappears. This isn't science fiction. It's already happening. AI farms write news articles. Bots dominate crypto discussions. Fake accounts manipulate stock markets. Entire comment sections are seeded with psychological nudges. And now, with AI-generated video and voice, even faces and personalities can be faked. You could be watching a YouTuber who doesn't exist, or chatting with someone who's not real, or being influenced by a movement that was never grassroots. So if the internet is dead, what are we living in now? Some call it ghost culture. Some call it the simulation. But it's more like a mirror, reflecting what a few powerful entities want you to see. You think you're browsing freely. You're not. You're walking a scripted path. As you fall asleep tonight, ask yourself this: when was the last time you had a real human conversation online? Not just emojis or likes, a conversation. And if you can't remember, maybe it's because you've been speaking to ghosts. Chronovisor, buried deep within the Vatican archives, behind locked doors and guarded secrets, lies the rumor of a device so strange, so powerful, it could rewrite our understanding of time. It's called the Chronovisor. Not a theory, not a thought experiment, a machine, allegedly built in the 1950s by a team of scientists led by Father Pellegrino Ernetti, a Benedictine monk with a background in physics, music, and theology. The story goes that the Chronovisor allowed users to see into the past, not metaphorically, literally, through a screen, like watching history unfold live. You could witness speeches by Napoleon, observe ancient Roman debates, even watch the crucifixion of Christ. Think about what that means. Absolute proof of historical events. No debate, no interpretation, just raw footage from any point in time. That's what makes the Chronovisor so dangerous and so compelling. Ernetti claimed the machine was built in secret with help from top scientists, including Nobel Prize winner Enrico Fermi and German rocket pioneer Werner von Braun. Together, they supposedly created a device using mysterious particles, harmonics, and electromagnetic fields to capture echoes of time, like radio waves that never die. According to Ernetti, all events in history leave behind energy traces. The Chronovisor tuned into them. It didn't travel through time, it received it. Like an antenna pulling in broadcasts from the past. No paradoxes, no wormholes. Just playback. He described it as a large cabinet filled with cathode ray tubes, antennas, dials, and levers, like an old-school television crossed with lab equipment, and on its screen, they could tune into scenes from any time, anywhere. Ernetti claimed to have witnessed key moments in history. One of his most controversial claims? Watching a lost play by the Roman playwright Quintus Ennius, supposedly recorded by the Chronovisor and translated by scholars. Even more shocking, he said they viewed Christ's crucifixion in vivid detail. He described the event with striking specificity, details no ancient text contained. Later, a photo emerged of Jesus on the cross, allegedly taken directly from the Chronovisor's screen. Critics said it looked like a sculpture, possibly a forgery, but believers said it didn't matter. The point was, someone was trying to suppress it, because here's the core of the conspiracy. After witnessing what the Chronovisor could do, the Vatican decided it was too dangerous to exist. They locked it away, or dismantled it, or both. The Vatican has never confirmed its existence, but they haven't fully denied it either. In 1988, the Vatican issued a curious warning. Anyone using a device to record past events would be excommunicated. Why would they say that, unless such a device might exist? The implications are staggering. If the Chronovisor were real, it would shatter every historical debate. You could settle religious disputes, political arguments, courtroom decisions. You could learn ancient knowledge. You could expose lies. You could, perhaps, manipulate the past, not by changing it, but by knowing the exact emotional triggers of every era. Imagine governments having access to that level of precision. Surveillance of not just the present, but the past. But some say the chronovisor wasn't just a viewer. Some whispers claim it could also glimpse the future. Ernetti never admitted this directly, but in certain writings, there are suggestions, hints, that the machine's capabilities were broader than he let on. That time isn't a line, but a field, and the chronovisor could scan it in any direction. If you think this is just fiction, ask yourself, why has time viewing always been a theme that resurfaces? In remote viewing programs like those of the CIA, in military psychic experiments, in quantum physics models that suggest time might be nonlinear, in AI prediction models trained to simulate future scenarios, all of it builds on the idea that time is accessible, not just forward, but backward. Not with magic, but with technology. The chronovisor sits at the nexus of all these theories, too advanced for its time, too dangerous for public hands, and too disruptive to ever be allowed into the open. If the Vatican truly had it, they would have every incentive to suppress it. It could confirm or destroy scripture. It could validate or disprove theology. It could deconstruct political narratives, reveal the truth behind assassinations, coups, scandals, even the origin of certain religions or ideologies. Ernetti died in that the Vatican needed to kill the story, not because it was false, but because it was true. And now the chronovisor remains legend. A device you'll never see, a secret buried beneath stone and ritual. But imagine this. What if somewhere, in a silent chamber of the Vatican, the machine still hums? What if it's been upgraded? What if today's tech, AI, quantum computing, neural networks, has brought it back to life in a form we can't even detect? And what if some of the things you think are ancient truths or historical consensus were actually fed to us by people who've seen the past and edited what the rest of us get to know? The chronovisor, if real, doesn't just challenge time. It challenges control, because whoever holds the truth about the past controls the present, and whoever can see the future never has to ask permission again. Lost civilizations. Under the ice, there's something about Antarctica that doesn't add up. A frozen wasteland, locked under miles of ice, hostile and unreachable, yet it's home to research stations from the most powerful nations on Earth. No permanent residents, no real economy, and yet all eyes are on it. What if I told you it's not because of climate or science? What if Antarctica's real secrets lie buried deep under the ice, forgotten cities, advanced technology, evidence of a civilization lost to time? That's the core of this conspiracy, that ancient humans, or something older, once lived in Antarctica, and their remains are being hidden from us. Let's start with the fact that Antarctica wasn't always frozen. Scientists agree the continent was once warm and green. Fossil records show it had forests, flowing rivers, even dinosaurs. Satellite images and radar scans have revealed subglacial lakes, mountain ranges, and, according to some, unnaturally shaped structures that don't match geological patterns. In 2002, the Antarctic Muon and Neutrino Detector Array, AMANDA, began picking up strange anomalies deep under the ice, signals that didn't match natural formations. Then came Operation Icebridge, a NASA mission using radar to map the land beneath Antarctica's surface. Again, strange shapes, geometric patterns, almost architectural, something that doesn't look like nature. Now layer in the ancient maps. In 1513, Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis drew a map showing the Antarctic coastline, accurate to within modern satellite precision, but it was drawn centuries before Antarctica was officially discovered, and it shows the continent without ice. That shouldn't be possible. Unless the map was based on far older sources, records from a time when Antarctica was still exposed. The theory gets deeper. Whistleblowers, ex-military, and even researchers have claimed to witness strange activity on the continent, entrances carved into mountains, warm underground structures, aircraft moving in ways they couldn't explain, even restricted zones enforced by international forces. And if that sounds far-fetched, consider this. Antarctica is the only place on Earth where every major government agrees not to colonize or exploit. The Antarctic Treaty. No war, no mining, just science. But what if the real reason is to keep people away? There's a persistent story about a Nazi expedition to Antarctica in the late 1930s. They called it New Swabia. They mapped it, built structures, and possibly discovered underground caverns heated by geothermal vents. Some believe the Nazis established a secret base beneath the ice, one that remained active after World War II. Supposedly, Admiral Byrd's Operation High Jump in 1946 was a military effort disguised as a research mission. The real objective? Engage whatever forces were down there. The operation ended abruptly, with Byrd making vague, ominous comments about enemy aircraft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. After that, silence. Then there's the UFO connection. Antarctica has long been associated with sightings of strange crafts, bright orbs, hovering disks, sudden disappearances. Some suggest that what's buried under the ice isn't human at all, that it predates humanity, advanced technology, power sources we can't replicate, maybe even remnants of a non-human civilization, aliens, ancient gods, or something in between. Ancient astronaut theorists point to myths from around the world that speak of a land to the south, cold, distant, sacred. The Hopi talk of inner earth. The Sumerians spoke of Anunnaki, descending from the heavens and retreating to the lower world after passing knowledge to humans. Plato's story of Atlantis ends with a civilization destroyed and swallowed by the sea. What if it wasn't destroyed, just hidden? Some researchers believe the ice itself is hiding more than just ruins, that buried within it are fully intact cities, frozen in time, waiting to be uncovered. Structures with sharp angles, metal components, things carbon dating can't explain. And slowly, as climate change eats away at the ice, fragments start to appear. Stone outcroppings, carvings, artifacts that don't fit the established timeline. But instead of sharing them, governments quarantine the areas. Send in private contractors. Classify the findings. Think about it. Why would world powers, often at odds, agree on anything? But they all respect the Antarctic secrecy. They share data, yes, but they don't share everything. There are no journalists roaming the continent, no civilian expeditions beyond the edges. It's a scientific zone, but only for those with clearance. Everyone else sees snow. There's also speculation about an energy source under the ice. Something ancient and self-sustaining, zero-point energy, magnetic resonance, a machine possibly still running. In 2016, WikiLeaks dumped emails from high-level officials talking cryptically about Antarctica. One included references to a discovery that would change the world. Another involved astronaut Buzz Aldrin visiting the continent and later tweeting a strange message, then deleting it. That radar anomalies are just ice formations. That maps were misinterpreted. That human imagination fills in blanks, but the coincidences pile up. Satellite feeds cut out over certain zones. Scientific teams go missing and reappear silent. Stories leak, then vanish. Whistleblowers go quiet. If there is a lost civilization under the ice, the implications are massive. It would rewrite history. Erase the assumption that civilization started 5,000 years ago. Prove that humans, or someone, had advanced tech long before we thought, and it would destabilize power, religion, politics, economics. So the secret must stay buried, literally. As you drift off, imagine standing on the white plains of Antarctica. Cold wind in your face, then beneath your feet, the ground thaws slightly, a crack opens, and beneath the layers of ice, not fossils, not rock, but stairs, lights, symbols, something waiting. Black night satellite floating in silence above our heads, locked in a polar orbit that shouldn't exist, is an object that some say has been there for thousands of years. It's not a piece of space junk. It's not an old satellite. According to the theory, it's something older, something alien, something watching. They call it the Black Night satellite. And depending on who you ask, it's either the most overlooked secret in modern space history or the final piece of a puzzle we were never meant to solve. Let's get something out of the way. There is a real object. Multiple photos, including those taken by NASA during missions like STS-88, show a strange, irregularly shaped black mass orbiting Earth. It doesn't look like any known satellite. It has sharp, asymmetric angles. It casts shadows that don't match space debris. It's been observed shifting positions, maintaining stable orbits that shouldn't be possible for uncontrolled objects. But the real mystery goes much deeper. The story begins in the late 1800s. Nikola Tesla, working in Colorado Springs in 1899, reported receiving a series of unexplained signals from space. He described them as rhythmic pulses, unlike any natural phenomena. He believed, strongly, that they were artificial. Messages, possibly from another world. Fast forward to the 1920s. Radio operators across Europe began picking up long-delay echoes, signals that bounced back several seconds after transmission. That's not normal. There's no mechanism in known science that explains such delays. Some believed it was the work of an object orbiting Earth, a relay. In 1954, newspapers ran stories quoting the U.S. Air Force claiming to have detected two mysterious satellites orbiting Earth years before any country had launched anything into space. No explanation, just sightings. The Soviet Union didn't launch Sputnik until 1957. So where did those satellites come from? In 1960, Time magazine published an article about a dark satellite discovered in polar orbit, again, something that shouldn't exist. Neither the US nor the Soviets had the technology to maintain a stable polar orbit at the time. That's when people started connecting the dots. The name Black Knight stuck. And since then, every few years, it pops back into public attention. Here's the twist. Some say the Black Knight isn't just watching, it's transmitting. Decoding attempts have claimed to extract star maps. One analysis suggested it was pointing to Epsilon Boötis, a star system 200 light-years away. The idea? That the satellite is an ancient probe, sent here millennia ago by a civilization from that system. A kind of cosmic buoy, quietly watching, occasionally transmitting. And then there's the imagery. During NASA's STS-88 mission in 1998, photos emerged showing a black object floating in low Earth orbit. NASA said it was a thermal blanket lost during a spacewalk, but the shape, behavior, and trajectory didn't match. Conspiracy theorists and amateur astronomers pushed back hard. The object looked too structured, too intentional. And after that mission, it was never mentioned again in any official capacity. Just silence. Some believe the Black Knight is inactive now. Others think it's still transmitting, but only to those who know how to listen. There's a theory that only certain frequencies, outside civilian range, can pick up its signal. Some radio operators claim to have intercepted non-random pulses, mathematical patterns, even primitive code. Of course, none of this is verified. That's what makes it so maddening. Let's step back. Why would an alien race send a satellite to Earth and leave it there for thousands of years? Theories vary. It could be a monitoring station, a probe gathering data, a warning beacon, a test to see how we respond to evidence of intelligence beyond our own, or it could be dormant tech waiting for a trigger. A code, a frequency, something we haven't yet discovered that will activate it. There's also the theory that we've already made contact with it, quietly, that certain world governments or agencies received its signal and chose not to tell the public. Think about it. If tomorrow it was confirmed that an object orbiting Earth had been put there by an alien race, how would the world react? Religions would be shaken. Institutions would scramble. The implications would be seismic. Better to keep it quiet. Better to call it a blanket. But what if it's more than a probe? What if it's a warning, a marker left behind to keep others away or us in? What if the Black Knight is less of a satellite and more of a gatekeeper? What if its presence is why we've never gone further than the moon? Why every plan for Mars gets delayed, cut, or quietly canceled? There's a thread that ties secrecy, silence, and space together. The Black Knight may just be the knot at the center. As you fall asleep tonight, picture it. A silent sentinel, drifting high above the Earth, endlessly orbiting, watching continents shift, empires rise and fall, languages evolve. A dark observer that never sleeps, never speaks, until it does. Project Bluebeam. Now we get to one of the most mind-warping conspiracy theories out there, one that blends technology, psychology, religion, and control into a single terrifying idea. It's called Project Bluebeam, and the claim is this, that a powerful group, usually pegged as NASA, the United Nations, or some secretive elite, plans to stage a massive world-changing event, not a real event, a fake one, using advanced holographic technology, synthetic sound frequencies, and psychological manipulation. They will simulate a global religious awakening, alien invasion, or apocalyptic phenomenon. The endgame: to unite the world under a single global government, erasing all previous belief systems in the process. A new world order by way of illusion. The theory comes from journalist Serge Monast, who in 1994 gave a detailed account of what he claimed was a leaked plan titled Project Bluebeam. According to him, it involves 4 key stages. First, the breakdown of all archaeological knowledge. Using earthquakes and hoax discoveries, the group would reveal ancient texts and artifacts that disprove current religions. Basically, shake the foundation of people's faith. Then, Phase 2, a massive holographic light show in the sky, images of religious figures, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Krishna, projected in 3D across different parts of the world. The visuals would speak in every language. Eventually, they would all merge into one entity, the new God, the one truth, the voice of authority. Phase 3 kicks it up, telepathic communication. The theory says the government or secret cabal has already developed low-frequency radio technology that can transmit thoughts directly into your mind. Not just sounds, but voices you think are your own thoughts. The goal? To convince people that the God they saw is speaking directly to them, guiding them, warning them, manipulating them. Think about how vulnerable that makes you. If a voice in your head says, "Follow me," how would you know it isn't divine? Then comes Phase 4, supernatural manifestations, or at least simulations of them. The plan includes fake alien invasions, staged demonic possessions, and even reverse rapture events where people appear to vanish into thin air. All of it orchestrated with holograms, drones, secret weapons, and advanced mind control. The chaos would be global. The fear would be overwhelming. And out of that chaos, the New World Order would present itself as salvation. One government, one currency, one faith, all pre-planned. Sound insane? Sure. But here's where it gets creepy. Hologram technology exists, and it's getting better every year. We've already seen realistic projections of dead musicians on stage. Combine that with drone swarms, global satellites, 5G infrastructure, and AI deepfake voice technology, and suddenly, the pieces don't sound so impossible. Add in the psychological tools governments have tested, like MKUltra, mass surveillance, and targeted propaganda, and the idea of influencing thought isn't science fiction. It's just uncomfortable truth. Monist also said that part of Project Bluebeam would be the creation of global crises to make people more receptive. Economic collapse, pandemics, extreme weather, food shortages, anything to shake stability. Sound familiar? According to the theory, these aren't random. They're steps in conditioning the population. Desperate people are easier to manipulate. One detail that haunts believers is Monist's sudden death. Just 2 years after going public with Project Bluebeam, he died of a heart attack. So did another journalist working on the same topic. Their children were reportedly taken by the state, and just like that, silence. Monist claimed that heart attacks could be induced using directed energy weapons, a theory the US military has at least explored. Now think about what you've seen in recent years. Videos of mysterious lights in the sky, unidentified aerial phenomena acknowledged by the Pentagon, rumors of alien disclosure just around the corner. What if those aren't real? What if we're being primed? Slowly introduced to the idea that there's something out there, so that when the holograms appear, we're ready to believe. Even if you don't buy the specifics, the core idea of Bluebeam lingers. Technology has reached a point where illusion and reality are indistinguishable. Truth is no longer what's provable, it's what's perceived. And if a group had the tools to hijack your senses, hijack your thoughts, and hijack your faith, what would stop them? As you fall asleep, imagine looking up at the night sky and seeing a glowing figure descending from the clouds. Everyone around you is in awe. Some cry, some pray. You feel something too. A voice in your head, gentle but firm, telling you everything is about to change, and you believe it. The great silence. The universe is vast. It's ancient. Billions of stars, trillions of planets, endless chances for life to evolve. So here's the question that breaks everything. Where is everybody? And what this segment's really about is the terrifying silence that answers it. Because maybe the most haunting thing about the universe isn't that we're alone, it's that we might not be, and we're just not supposed to know. The great silence isn't just the absence of a signal. It's the possibility that the signal is being jammed, or worse, that the moment you make too much noise, something finds you. Let's rewind. The universe should be teeming with life. Statistically, it doesn't make sense that Earth is the only intelligent world. We've been listening to space for over 60 years. SETI has pointed radio dishes at the stars, scanned billions of frequencies, waited for a ping, but we've heard nothing. No alien music, no greetings, no strange code, just static. That's the great silence. And here's where it gets dark. Some scientists have started wondering if maybe there's a reason for it. What if the universe is not quiet by accident, but by design? Here's one explanation: the zoo hypothesis. It suggests that Earth is being watched, but we're in quarantine. An interstellar civilization sees us as too young, too violent, or too unpredictable to be contacted. They're observing us the way humans study animals, without interference. We're interesting, but not ready. The great silence in this case isn't a void, it's a choice. We're being ignored. But then there's the dark forest theory, which flips the fear up a level. It says the universe is like a dark forest. Every civilization is a hunter moving silently, knowing that any noise, any signal, any shout into the void could reveal your location to something stronger, something ruthless. So every intelligent species stays quiet. They don't broadcast. They don't reach out. Because the first one to be noticed dies. That theory turns the Fermi paradox into a survival strategy. Maybe we haven't heard anyone because those who talked got wiped out. And now ask yourself, what have we been doing? Sending signals, beaming music and math out into the dark. We've launched gold-plated records into space with maps showing how to find us. Carl Sagan believed it was noble. But what if we're the naive ones? What if we've been yelling in a forest where everything else is hiding? What if something heard us and it's on its way? Some go further and suggest that the silence isn't because no one's there, but because someone is there, actively keeping it quiet. That advanced civilizations have seeded the galaxy with listening devices. Any sign of technological life, radio waves, nuclear signatures, propulsion systems, gets detected and neutralized, silently. No warning, no war, just gone. And this gets creepier when you think about how rare Earth might be. We're in the Goldilocks zone. We have a stable star, a magnetic field, a big moon, a protective gas giant like Jupiter to soak up asteroids, all weirdly perfect, like a lab built for something specific. Could be coincidence, could be design, and if it's design, who's the designer? Now here's a twist. What if we're not the first intelligent civilization on Earth? What if others came before us, millions of years ago, got advanced, sent signals, made contact, and vanished? Some scientists call this the Silurian hypothesis, the idea that if a high-tech species existed on Earth millions of years ago, almost all evidence would be erased by geological processes. Cities crumble, satellites burn up, even plastic biodegrades over enough time, so we'd never know. Maybe we're not alone. Maybe we're not even the first. Another possibility? We've already made contact, but forgot. There's a theory that ancient myths, religious visions, and unexplained disappearances are distorted memories of contact events. The burning wheels in the sky in Ezekiel's vision, the flying vimanas in Hindu texts, the star gods of Egypt, Mesoamerica, Sumer, all talking about visitors from the sky, not gods, not demons, visitors. And somewhere along the line, we buried it. Or maybe we are alone, and that's the most horrifying truth of all, that intelligence is a fluke, that the universe is indifferent, that no matter how long we wait, we'll never hear another voice in the dark, just the hum of entropy. Silence stretching across galaxies. But even then, the silence feels wrong, too complete, too total, like something is being withheld, or that we're in a simulation, and the developers haven't written the rest of the civilizations yet, or worse, they have, and they've made sure we can't reach them. Every year we scan further, hear clearer, map deeper, and still nothing, just the void.